afternoon, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Carrie Linklater. I'm your chairperson this afternoon, and I'm joined on the panel to my immediate left, Mr. Richard Whitbread, and my far left, Mr. Mark Boreski. Our city assessor today is Brittany Santucci, and our admin secretary is Katie Sutherland. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparison of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by City Council and is independent of it and the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. And as information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. Swear everybody in.
Brittany Santucci, do you swear that the evidence you represent is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You do. Do you swear? Please state your name.
Travis Baker.
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Just before we begin, a couple of notes of housekeeping. Everybody could make sure their cells are turned off. Thank you. And also, we will not be hearing any evidence concerning past board decisions, written or verbal, by either the assessor or the applicants. If it's concerning a municipal board, that is acceptable.
Are you talking about this previous decision from this cycle or previous cycles or both?
We're only looking at 2020. Okay. Thank you. And with that, good afternoon, Mr. Bedker and Ms. Santucci, and whenever you're ready.
Thank you. This is file number 19-3621, roll number 03065043600. Address is unit C2, 1700 Waverly Street. This is a car dealership. The actual year built, the first portion was 2007, and then there was an addition in 2018. The total leasable area is 24,921 square feet. If you turn to page 2, there's an aerial photo of the property. It's in the Waverly Auto Mall, and the exterior photo would be reflective of the work done to it in 2018. On page 3, there's just some interior photos, just for the waiting room, the showroom. And then on page 4 as well, of just the showroom and some office space. The request for income expense was received, no subject sale history, and reviewing the mailer, the landlord and tenant have common ownership, so there's not a true net lease in place. On page 5, I have the vehicle dealership income workup. So we have a leasable area of the 24,921 square feet. and we've applied a rental rate, the modeled rate of $11.82 per square foot. So we've used a 2% vacancy loss, the 2% expenses for this year, the shortfall of $6 per square foot, and an overall capitalization rate of 7.15%. So the estimated value would be $3,915,000. On page 6 is our rental comparables. You've probably seen this before. We're comparing to retail big box stores on since there's not a lot of dealership rents due to owner occupied, and based on they have retail floor areas, office space, warehouse space, larger leasable area. So my average is $18.86, my median is $18.29. For the auto comparables at the bottom, we have an average of $17.54 and $16.25. On page 7, I had included this in my brief. I'm not going to speak to it because I couldn't speak to the assessor who created it, so I don't think it would be correct to speak to it, so I'm just going to leave that. Page 8 is just the income value summary. Page 9 is our model drive capitalization rates. Page 10 is Municipal Assessment Act excerpts, and on page 11 is the start of the 2017 income and expense questionnaire. And if we turn to page 15, I just have included the permits just to show the addition that was added in 2018. And on page 17 just shows the addition is in the rear, and then there was some work done up front to the main showroom as well. On page 18 is the 2020 Board Revision Addenda. I'm sure everybody's seen this, so just a quick fresh look for the 2020. On page 21, additional cap rate evidence. Page 22 is just the non-recoverable expense sampling. We now have the 2% non-recoverable expense. And page 23 is the IWO standards. So my recommendation today is to maintain the 2020 assessed value of $3,915,000. Thank you, that's my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just a
Mr.
couple of
Beckman?
questions. Page 5. Okay, so you're classing it as a vehicle dealership,
Yes.
but your rent is based on retail warehouse?
Retail, yes, stores.
The vacancy on retail warehouses, is it not between 4 and 6%?
That I'm not sure of, but I'll take your, I haven't done any retail properties, so.
Okay. Do you know why you're using 2 on the vehicles?
It would just be the model parameter used.
Okay. And the cap rate is 7.15. That's a drop from the last go-around, correct?
I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, 7.2 or 7.5. I can't remember the exact number, but that would have been in 2018, I think. So yes, it dropped.
All right, and that's my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Boraski?
Just going farther down the list, the 7.15 is the normal big box cap rate.
That I'm unaware of. I just know we have it for the vehicle dealerships. Unfortunately, I don't work in retail, so I didn't look into what they have.
Do you usually use the rent from big box, but everything else from dealerships? Or is there time when, with a dealership, you would have used all big box factors instead?
So from my understanding, we started using the big box, I think, last cycle. And normally we don't, like from my other properties I've dealt with, we try to keep the same comparables. I think the reasoning was that we don't have vehicle dealership comparables, and we thought these would be most similar, even though I would say the higher ones are obviously superior at certain, the tenants for the retail space, for sure.
Thinking theoretically, what would be the argument about risk translated into cap rate between a warehouse as a comparable and an actual car dealership? Which would be riskier, or are they identical?
I didn't go into depth with the risk of a retail, so I'm not sure. With car dealerships, I don't know a lot about the risk involved with them. I know that they have to adhere to what would be if it's like a Honda's rules. So that I think I'm not sure if they're franchisees. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I would assume that there's some risk. I guess if occurred, if they wanna change, you have to change it type of thing, so there'd probably be some risk involved.
Thank you, that's all my questions.
Thank you. Stuart?
Page 1113 of the mailer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a bit confused. The owner tells us it's 12,000 some square feet. I didn't notice if you'd address that.
That might be, so they would have filled this out for the 17, and I think it's just due prior to the addition. So I think
they
that's.
doubled their size. in
Yeah,
that
so with the
period.
addition, I think that's all that has to do.
Okay. And on page 6, are there any actual dealers on this bottom section where you've got auto? Or are they all related to dealers or the auto business? Do you know that?
One is Frontier Acquisition, I thought that was a dealership, number 31 on Pembina.
That's my understanding too.
And then I think, actually, number 28 I should have spoke to, because I normally deal with it with CMBSRs. That's the MPI building on Main, but I'm currently waiting on a response from the income expense, just to determine what the actual area is in the lease of that. So I would strike that one out, because I haven't got a response yet from the person on the mailer. And then the other one, I know one is just an auto body on comparable 29, and 30 is the auto gallery, so I'm not sure, I've never been to the auto gallery.
Okay, so the bottom one is the
Yeah.
dealer on the list.
Mhm.
Okay. No other questions? Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So, Ms. Santucci, did anybody inspect this property? Did you?
1 second. I have not been in there. The last person to inspect it was possibly the assessor who dealt with it for the new construction. I don't have a date in the note, though. I just know that it was done in 2019, in January, the changes were made. So I'm assuming it would have been around that time, maybe a bit prior, that they would have inspected in December. Usually it takes a while to.
Do you have a note specifically saying that somebody inspected it?
I only have a note that states the new construction. Normally when we do new construction, we're supposed to inspect. So, but as of this note, it doesn't say a specific date of the inspection.
Okay. So you don't have any field notes on the new construction?
I just have
Or the-
stated what was done, who they spoke to, when it was completed, and just based on, like the size. They didn't add an effective year or anything. They felt it was reflective, like, I guess the rate that was placed on it, so. Pretty much just the breakdown of what the original area was, what the additions were. That's all I have.
Okay. So your cap rate of 7.15. So, page 9 of your brief with your
Mhm.
cap rates, and you're saying this is retail, you're comparing it to big box?
That's what we compare it to for the comparable rents, yes.
Right. Okay, so you've got it in the 20th. And on page 6 of your brief for your rent comparables, sorry, which ones would you say are the most comparable? Because you've got 27 comparables here.
It's hard to say what's most comparable because, again, they're not. It's so hard not having comparables for dealerships. It's mostly based on like the size of the building, what's in the building. I guess if it would be based on age, I would think it would be, I'm not sure if this one here, if there's higher rents for new, I know sometimes with other comparables I look at the newer the age, the higher the rent. I guess for this property, it's located in Waverly. Some of the ones, I guess, close would be Sterling Lines, but I would still all say the retail ones would be more superior to the car dealerships in general, so.
And I just want to verify this is owner occupied.
This one, yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Becker?
I could actually clarify a couple of the things. That on page 6 of the assessor's brief, that drop on 1284 Main, it does have approximately, it's actually 40,000 square feet. because it has finished office space. The one in Portage used to be a Boyd auto body. The one at 3680 it's a brand new auto body, so the rent doesn't really apply anymore because it's owner occupied. And the one at 2537 Pembina, that's an internal lease between Frontier, Subaru, and Frontier Acquisitions. So those ones we've never relied on. If I could ask the board to turn to, I just have a couple of issues. It's basically vacancy, non-recoverable expenses, and the cap rate. So 3 or 4. The vacancy, we're considering that the vacancy at 2% is too low. We're considering it more to be like a big box, and in the past, we've always fought 4% for these, and we're using 4% in our valuation for the capitalization rate. Shortfall, we're using the assessor's $6. Non-recovered, we're using our 7% based on our studies, and for the capitalization rate, when the supplementary was done, for 19 of this property, there was a 7.5% cap rate, and now we're at 7.15. We're suggesting, because of the new addition, that the cap rate should be no less than 7.25 on this property. And our summary is on page 7. We're not disputing the assessor's rent. The overall rent of $13 would include a higher rent on the main and a lower rent on the mezzanine area, so we're not disputing the rent. We're asking for 4% vacancy, 7% non-recoverable, 7.2 cap, 5 cap, and we're asking for a value of $3,545,000 rounded. Now, we have some interior photos of the old and the new, starting on page 10. So page 10, there's a couple of different views of the showroom. Page 11, there's a main floor boardroom, and there's some service bays. There's parts storage, main floor office, and then there's a mezzanine on 13, mezzanine lunchroom and mezzanine office space. And at the top of 14, there's mezzanine storage, and at the bottom there's mezzanine mechanical. So that includes the existing and the new that was added for 19. And I'm not sure whether or not I can bring this up on page 21. I have a copy of the assessor's valuation for the 219 supplementary. And that's where it shows the overall rent of $12.78, 2% vacancy, 7% for non-recoverables, and a 7.5 cap rate. So based on our parameters, we feel that a fair value should be $3,545,000, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you. Santucci?
Based on the supplementary, you would agree though that our net operating income went down and our cap rate went down?
I'd have to look. I never actually compared that.
Okay. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Mr. Boreski?
You said the cap should be 7.25, if I understand it correctly, due to the renovation?
Well, normally we say there's no compression in the cap rate between April 16 and 18, but this one has a new addition on, so we're suggesting 7.25.
Yeah, but why? Sorry, what's the relationship between?
It brings up the age of the building, so it's got a longer potential income ability.
Okay. And there's a question about the zoning. This is M2 zoning on this property, is that correct?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure. Trevor may have more information, but there's a couple of condominiums in that area, but I don't think this one was. It was an industrial area at one time, and now there's several dealerships in this. This would be on the west side of Waverly, just north of McGilvery. No, of the perimeter.
This is on the west side or the east side?
I'm sorry, this one is on the east side.
East
I
side.
bought a car.
Your other way.
Yeah, my other way.
And so then it is possible that there is different zoning for different dealerships in that auto mall?
Yeah, I don't know. I've never looked at the zoning.
That's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Whitman?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Mr. Beck, can you refer to your choice in your brief, pages 10, 11, 12, and 13?
Yes.
Is that a mix of old and new?
Yes.
Do you know?
I didn't go in, it just was somebody in our office inspected it for the supplementary, but were doing the old start. The new addition was all mainly added at the rear of the property,
Right.
but I don't know which part of these pictures is new and old. It all looks like it was done at the same time.
It's set on the,
They might, you know, the mezzanine area, part of that's gonna be new, because the original square footage was the 12,753.
yeah, 17 went to the showroom and 6,000 went to the shop.
Yeah.
Interior alterations, mezzanine, yeah. Okay. And you're looking for the 5%.
Yes.
Thank you, I have no further questions. Any wish for a summation from either of you? Ms. Santich, no? Mr. Beckford?
Thank you. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
You guys-
Well, I like that, I was hoping you would forget.
Next slide. I know Mr. Story has less than I do.
I want to hear you.
Okay. Fair enough. I can hear you. Most people don't.
And you have more evidence.
Just check my beautiful case over here.
Sorry, we're gonna go to 1376 Regent.
If I could just have a minute or two to organize, that would be great.
Sure. Okay.
So we're starting with 1376.
Yes, 1376 Regent. You're ready?
All set. Yes.
Okay. Ms. Santucci, whenever you're ready.
I am, sorry.
Oh, sorry, yes, that's right.
State your name.
Trevor Smith.
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, yes.
Thank you. This is file number 19-602, roll number 09007571500. Address is 1376 Regent Avenue West. So there's actually 3 buildings on this property, and if you turn to page 2, on the top aerial photo, the co-op would be located in the northwest corner. In the northeast corner, there's kind of the course-related service buildings, and then in the rear in the south west corner as well. So for bottom of page 2, I just have an exterior photo of the property facing off of Regent. That's the co-op. And on page 3, I also have a picture of the top one is of the Kia just facing off of Regent, and then in the rear That would be the bottom photo for the exterior. I couldn't find any recent inspection notes, and there was no interior photos. On page 4 is the request for information, it's been filled out. No subject sale history. From what I could determine, 2 of the buildings were the owner occupied. The tenant verification form states co-op is not owner occupied, and the monthly rent works out to $42.59 per square foot, and then the annual rent of $114,996. On page 5, I have the income stream workup for the vehicle, the dealership we have it listed. We have 3 premises. So the first premise for the 7,548 square feet is for the building built in 1998. The 15,646 square feet is for the building built in 2006. And then for the 4,808 square feet, that's also for the 1998 building. So we have a total potential rent of $398,298, with a leasable area total of 28,002 square feet, and I'll divide that to get. A blended rate of $14.22. So for this property, we again have a vacancy loss of 2%, expenses at 2%, shortfall at $6, and a capitalization rate of 7.15%, for an estimated market value of $5,303,000. On page 6 is the rent comparables we've just gone over for the vehicle dealership. Page 7, again, I haven't confirmed any of this, so I'm not going to go over that. Page 8 is for the vehicle car wash located at the gas station. This was built in 2009. We have a leasable area of 2,605 square feet at $9.22 rent per square foot. So for this one, we're also using 2% vacancy, 2% for expenses, and this one we're using $4.50 per square foot for shortfall, and a capitalization rate of 5.4%. The estimated market value is $423,000. We turn to page 9. It's the gas station store kiosk with pumps. So this year built is 2009, leasable area of 2,042 square feet. And we have a rental rate of $34.54 applied per square foot. The same for the vacancy loss of 2, expenses 2. The shortfall for this one is $6 per square foot, and an overall capitalization rate of 6.15%. We also have the additional building value at $510,000 for the pumps and tanks, and an estimated value of $1,607,000. On page 10 is the gas station car wash pad site rents. So for the property we're looking at today, it has the car wash, so comparables 1 and 5 and 12 also have car washes. These for the store range, there's the $40.25. The one has $65.94, but that one has a lower store area, and then $42.92 for comparable 12. And then for the car washes, we have it as the $10.50, $10.50, $10.50, and then for the ones in place for the not located at a gas station, we have $7.72 and $14.51. So on page 11 is the combined income summaries. We have a potential rent of $492,847. Vacancy is the 2%. Expenses at 2. The shortfall comes up with a bit of a blended number at 588. Net operating income of $469,491, and a capitalization rate from the 3 of them into 6.88%. Estimated market value $7,333,000. On page 12 is the model drive capitalization rates. On page 14 is the 2017 income and expense questionnaire. So it does show fully owner occupied on the first page, but if you go to page 16, it shows the bottom one at, not the bottom one, the middle one, sorry, the co-op gas bar as not owner occupied. And that's where I got the monthly rent from. We've already gone through my agenda, so my recommendation today is to maintain the 2020 assessed value of the $7,333,000. Thank you, that's my presentation.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Smith?
Yes, I do. Just to start with, I'll have a series of questions that will apply to all of the properties, so if everybody's in agreement, I'll just ask them once, and that information can carry forward if everybody's in agreement with that.
That's fine, thank
Unless
you.
there's any differences. So with regard to the subject property here, specifically the collision center and the auto dealership, as we're not contending the car wash and the gas operation. The valuation is all model driven, is it?
Yes, I'm on the
Okay, and just for each of these properties today, given workload at the city, did you have a chance to inspect any of them?
No, I haven't been in either of them. I've been to the gas station, but not the, not for work-related purposes.
Right, fair enough. All right, I'm flipping forward to your page number 5, so we have the vehicle dealership there. So this would lump together the vehicle collision center located at the rear of the site in a
Yes.
separate building, as well as the auto dealer at the front, correct? So when I look at the tenant class and they're all classed as C2 here, standard office, retail, industrial, finish.
Yes.
So they're all considered the same essentially, is that correct?
Yes, there could be different qualities applied, but as for the tenant class, they're all the same.
Okay, so the collision center is classed the same as the full dealership then?
Yes,
Okay.
there's not two separate income streams for this one. I'm not sure why. I actually probably should have added different comparables, as my error, but we have them all as one on here.
Okay. In looking at the vacancy that's applied to the subject here of 2%, do you know if that's lower than it was in the last cycle? And if there's any?
I can't say for sure, because I didn't do a lot of, but I don't know. If you know, then you could say that I do.
Okay.
I can't remember if it was 4, I feel like I've heard, but.
Okay, and that's again model driven and given the lease comparables that we're looking at there, they're relying upon other categories of properties in order to come up with the parameters for car
Yes.
dealerships, correct?
Yes.
So that 2% may be more reflective of what the city is considering vacancy is for big box, et cetera.
I can't speak to the vacancy for big box. I just know for the model, the 2% is applied for our vehicle dealerships.
Okay. Well, I'll ask a general question, Madam Chair. We've spent a lot of time over this cycle on non-recoverable expenses. I have obviously a lot to say about it. Do we need to go through that again, or is anything that I say today going to alter anything at this point? I have my standard
Depends on whether you're
rebuttal.
gonna improve on it.
Improve on it.
You got something new to
I have my standard rebuttal that I can submit, so it's in evidence, et cetera. I mean, there's nothing to improve upon. The information is the information. It's all very clear. Just for the record, the city has the non-recoverable expenses or rather the expense allowance that the city has for this cycle has been reduced from an overall rate of 7% inclusive of a 5% allowance and a 2% allowance, correct?
Yes,
Down
we
to
no
2%.
longer have the 5% management, so just the 2%.
Correct, and that that 5% allowance from past cycles, that was in reference specifically to a property management fee, was that correct?
That's my understanding, just the management.
Okay, and it's the city's contention that that has changed and should be removed.
That management's normally recovered now, so we remove that from the expense,
Right.
typically.
And again, and this isn't specifically to you, but it is the city saying that, that property management was not recovered in the past?
I think they saw the trend was that it was commonly being recovered, so we've removed it now.
Okay. Looking at the capitalization rate, again, on page number 5, we have a cap rate of 7.15%. Do you know if this has been reduced in the model from the last cycle?
I didn't work on this property from the last one, and I can't speak, I didn't really work with any of the car dealerships, I wasn't part of the
Okay.
last cycle, so I don't, from what I've heard, I think it was different last year, I just don't know the number.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that's fair, I have to ask these as questions, so, in any case, if it has been reduced, is the city aware of any transactions of full-scale auto dealers where arm's length leases were in place, where cap rates were able to be developed? Or are we relying on any sales of this specific type of property in arriving at that cap rate?
That I'm unsure of what the model, what was done for the model, so, I don't have any sales, to speak to, so.
Okay. And then just another question with regard to capitalization rate. So with the change in the model that the city has done in reducing the allowed expense allowance from an overall 7% to 2%, all other things being equal, that would drive a higher net income, would it not?
Depending if the
for-
rental rates stay the same.
So, yes, all other things being equal, that would drive a higher net income, would it
It
not?
would be if everything stayed the same.
Okay, so if the city were to apply this model in deriving their cap rates, which one would assume they probably have, that would then drive higher capitalization rates, would it not? If you have a higher net income, same sale price, you would then arrive at a higher cap rate, correct?
Yes, if the net operating incomes all went up, I guess, that would be.
Okay. Fair enough. So moving on to page 6, and again, I apologize for having to ask all these questions, but it's a necessary part. In looking at page number 6, and I believe in the first property that was dealt with here today, the first 27 lease comparables here, we're looking at essentially big box
Retail stores.
big box sales, right? So, in looking at the addresses here, we're looking at the Polo Park area and Power Center. We're looking at the Regent Lagimodier Power Center, essentially. We're looking at the area around IKEA, perhaps the area at Kenaston and McGilvery. Those would be the centers we're looking at, generally
Yes, for
speaking.
these comparables, yes.
Okay, and the types of tenants that we're seeing in these would be your Canadian Tires, your Michaels, your national level retailers, correct?
For the majority of them, I say yes, like common retail stores you would notice.
Okay. And the rental rates that are paid by retailers when a developer builds a power center and signs up a retailer to go into there, typically they have a particular build-out that's required for those tenancies, is that correct? So that would then,
Like a common look
The
and
common
feel
look
to
and-
the building and everything.
right, that's what I'm getting at. So that would require investment by the owner, would it not, and drive a higher rental rate to recapture that investment?
Yes, but I think you can also say that car dealerships have to follow, I guess, a certain build that they would have as well, as set by the company.
Okay. In, sorry, in looking at the buildings then, as I think this is an important point with regard to the big box retail versus auto dealerships. So when we look at a standard big box store, essentially, the building itself, it may be, you know, tilt-up concrete on concrete foundation, et cetera, relatively high ceilings with the branding of that particular retailer. The majority of the interior of the unit will be selling floor, will it not?
Yes.
So there will be a very small area at the back which would be shipping and receiving, but as you walk into the store, the majority of the goods, whether they're actively being sold or warehoused, essentially, they're on the floor as they stack them 3 or 4 levels high up to the ceiling, correct?
Mhm.
If you walk into Canadian Tire or others.
Mhm.
So that would be significantly different in terms of build out than an auto dealer, would it not? Where you have, if I were to suggest that an auto dealer would have in the range of 25 to 40% of the building being the retail / office section at the front of the building, and the remainder of the property being the service garage at the back, would that be
I would say that's a fair.
relatively fair assessment? Okay. Looking at the comps again on page number 6, if we look at the bottom, and you may have already spoken to this, 1284 Main, that would be the MPI. I think you may have said
Yes.
something about that.
So
Not
there's
being accurate.
a bit of an issue with the area, and I know when it was under appeal, there was hypothetical numbers applied to the main floor and the basement, so I've actually phoned the person who submitted it just to kind of get an idea of what the 44,000 square feet is. Because when they submit it to us, this is what it states, but there's been some issue with it, so I'm trying to clarify with the owner.
Okay, I don't know if I brought too many folders here today. I did print off the, somewhere here, I did print off the building attributes page from the City of Winnipeg online there, and it had something like 20,000.
There's about 44,000, there's a basement.
44,000 in total, yeah.
Yes.
But the basement wasn't half, but it was 15,000+, I believe, is that?
Yes,
So it was essentially a build to suit for MPI, I guess, right?
yes.
Okay. So that, if the area of the basement was added in, the rental rate would change significantly.
Yes, all I can,
Okay.
I won't speak to it, but there was an appeal and there was numbers assigned to it, so I'm just trying to figure out if those are the correct numbers, like to divvy it up.
Okay. So would it be fair to say we probably shouldn't place a lot of reliance on that figure at this point?
No, potentially it will go down a few dollars. It wasn't a huge drop, but I just wanted to confirm what it actually was. It was still about $15, so. I haven't spoken to anybody the person who submitted it, so.
Okay. So I'll just focus on the automotive ones at the bottom of the page here. So this may already have been mentioned, the 3570 Portage Avenue, that is a gross lease rather. And the net income, I believe, is in the range of $10 a square foot.
I didn't review
That's-
that mailer, so I'm not, it was my
Okay.
assumption they all would have been net, so.
And this is, I mean, it's challenging because again, you're here today with new information. I'm assuming these rental rates that are in here are all the same rental rates that have been applied to all the other dealers in the city? Is that
Yeah, it's
fair?
the
So you
standard
haven't-
form.
You haven't
Yeah.
selected these right now,
No.
right? So I know that in the past, the information has been presented to the the assessor that does the
Okay.
majority of these, where it was shown that the rental rate was gross and was
Okay.
inclusive of, so I know perhaps it hasn't been changed internally,
Mhm.
but that information, we can certainly supply that to you. 3680 Portage Avenue, already mentioned, I think, earlier today perhaps. The 7,200 square feet is the main floor area in that building, I believe, or I'm aware. The city hasn't included the mezzanine in their calculation of the rental rate there, I guess.
If that would be the main floor, then no, if it was a higher square footage, we're just using the 72.
There's roughly another 450 square feet, so that would drive that rental rate down into the $10, $11 range, I believe. 2537 Pembina Highway, so this is the former Subaru site. That's accurate. Sorry, I didn't get a chance, given the things that I had to do this week, to go through the brief. I'm not sure if, I don't think that email is in this particular one. This is representative of essentially the Pattison Auto Group coming into Winnipeg and acquiring two dealerships, is that correct? There's 2537 Pembina, and then the other one was on Regent Avenue, so it's been stated by the city itself that this is an above market rate. You're aware of that, I guess?
No, but if the other assessors are aware of it, then.
And there was also a buyout that was structured at the time that lease was struck, where after 3 years, the new tenant, Pattison, was able to purchase the site again at an above market value.
I'm unaware of any of that.
Okay. And again, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I do have to ask the questions. So page number 7 then, is it fair to say we should just disregard
Not looked
these?
at it. I couldn't speak to the assessor who created it, he's not, and I don't wanna speak to it if I don't have all the information and
Okay.
understanding of it.
Just as a general comment question then, is the city aware that when auto dealership properties trade, that the property owner, operator of the dealership is not able to sell their operating agreement with the brand themselves, so they build that into the purchase price of the sale of the realty.
I'm not aware of that, so
Okay.
I can speak to that.
Okay, the rest of it is the car wash kiosk. As I stated, we're not disputing those today. Moving on to capitalization rates on page number 12. So the big box retail is being relied upon. Is that essentially where the capitalization rate is being drawn from?
I would,
Like a power center cap rate, or?
I can't speak to where it's being drawn from, because I haven't, it has to do with the model, but I would say it would fall between the retail, like the 6.15, the 9.4, obviously the 7.15 is the 20th percentile, so I would just speak to that.
So it's essentially equating it to a good level power center.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boreski.
Your front page says 5 buildings, number of premises, 5.
Oh, that's just for the, so for number, 5 buildings, sorry. So what we have is, I think it has to do with the mezzanine, I'm not sure if that's where it's pulling that number from, So if we turn to my page 5, the 15,646 square feet is actually divided into 2 numbers when I looked at it in our buildings, and then the 7,548 has, I think, a main floor and a mezz. I'm not sure if that's what's drawing from it, but there is only 3 buildings on the site. It might just be how it was added in for the cost.
Okay, let me look at, well, it's perhaps a little easier actually to take a look at the front page of the agent's brief. There is a building that is obviously a gas bar, and there is a freestanding building behind it,
Yeah.
which goes with the gas bar, presumably, right? And are those 2 buildings then in your income stream?
Oh yeah, for that one, we
3.
have them 2 separate, and then there could be an addition on one of the larger buildings, and that would be the 5th building. I'm guessing, because we have, for some reason, we have split up, like I had, when I said on my page 5, the 7,548 is the 1998, and so is the 4,000.
Sorry, wait a minute,
Sorry.
let me go back there.
Yeah.
Which page?
So when I went, when I read up on the cost stuff, the 7,548 square feet
Yeah.
was built in 1998,
Mhm.
and then we also have a separate 1998 as the 4,808 square feet.
Okay,
So I'm not sure why they weren't together, but it showed 2 different, for the cost, like 2 different buildings there, even though it's 1 building.
so there's 2 structures.
I guess it.
I'm not sure why the city
It
doesn't
would be
call them
weird because-
structures as opposed to buildings.
Yes. And I'm not sure why, if they're both at 1998, why they weren't combined, but they are for sure separated in
Okay,
our system.
I'm looking at the front page of the agent's brief.
Mhm.
Which building is that?
It was my understanding the 1998 building was the front building, and then the collision center was the newer one.
So the front building is a dealership, the back building is a collision
Collision,
center.
yes.
Okay, and then the other 3 buildings are, there is the gas pump, there is the small kiosk where you go in to
Mhm.
pay, and they have some convenience items in there.
Mhm.
Does it function as a convenience store as well?
Yes, there'd be convenience store items in there as well.
Okay, and then the long rectangular building is the car wash.
Yes, I know for the canopies, though, we normally just add them as a detached structure, so I don't know if it'd be considered a building.
Okay, so if I turn to your page 11, stream 1
Yes,
is combining the car dealership and the collision center?
as 1. Yes.
Stream 2 is the car wash
Yes,
alone.
yes,
And stream 3 is the gas pumps plus canopy and the little building where you go in to pay.
yes,
Okay, combined, you're calling that the kiosk?
yes.
All right, and so, that's your understanding, there's no contention over the valuation of stream 3. The contention is over stream 1 and 2. Is that correct?
I thought it was just stream 1.
Stream 1.
Only stream 1?
Stream 1.
Only stream 1, okay.
This one.
Yeah. Okay, so again, you have taken your rents from big boxes,
Yes,
but all other factors in the income approach are not necessarily from big box.
no, they would fall under our vehicle dealership.
Okay, all right, that's all my questions.
Mr. Whitford?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
So you have no inspection notes?
No, not for the Keto or the collision center.
There's no questions. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So, 1376 Regent Avenue West. This is, as stated, it has Birchwood Collision Center. located in a freestanding building in the, I guess that would be the southwest corner of the site, and the rear corner. And on the front of the site, you have the Kia dealership that is in the automotive dealership building at the front. So they are separate and separated on site. If you look at my aerial on the front of the building, or rather the front of the brief, I know that it states that our overall land to plan area ratio for this site is roughly 7.5 to 1. If you look at the site, you can essentially take out a third of that land area as devoted and indeed dedicated to the car wash, the gas kiosk, and the convenience store payment center in the section that fronts on the northwest corner of the site, so right on Regent. So there is no, while that area is there, we are looking at the automotive dealership and the collision center somewhat combined, but in separation from that section. So suffice it to say, neither the auto dealer nor the collision center has any use of that third of the land on site. They cannot store cars there. They're not meant to drive through there to access their site, etc. So you can remove that from consideration with regard to the overall land to plan area ratio. Then you have the collision center on site at the back. The collision center essentially takes up roughly another third of the site at the back. You can see where their cars are stored at the rear of the site. They have some parking at the front of it, which would be facing the perpendicular street to Regent there. And then obviously you've got the Winnipeg Kia in the front. So the actual site for the dealership is very small. Their storage capacity here for product and for servicing of clients' cars or customer cars to come in and purchase product is very small. It's difficult to put a number on it, but it's well below what a standard dealer would be looking for today at 8 to 1. I would say you'd probably be more in the range of 3 to 1 in that for that particular portion of the site. Now, a bit of history with regard to this particular property. This was a Saturn dealership. Obviously, the Saturn company went out of business back in 2007, 2008, in that time frame. The Birchwood company, obviously one of the bigger dealers, automotive dealers in the city, had a number of brands in their overall business line of automotive sales. They did not have Kia at that time. When Saturn went out of business, there was a period of time where the building was unoccupied and they needed to find a brand that would be willing to take on that building. Now, if you look at the building itself, we're looking at 12,356 square feet, inclusive of the mezzanine area in the building. That is tiny for a modern dealership. It does not fit the bill for the majority of the brands out there. They would not entertain opening up opening up one of their stores or locations rather in tandem with the owner on this site in that building. So it did not fit the marketplace for automotive dealers. It's too small. It's obviously dated inside, etc. So it did not fit the bill. That's just a bit of background for you. Let's move forward to my page number 1 on the inside. It gives you a chart and some background on the property. I do feel very strongly that looking at the prior history of these properties is critical in looking at a fair market value for the properties. Obviously, you have to decide on the current material presented, but when we have a history following a fairly regular pattern, I think it's important that the board consider that information and arriving at their decision ultimately. So if you look back in time, we have appeals from 2012 forward, following a fairly regular pattern.
Sorry, Mr. Smith,
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm just gonna stop you there, as I had said at the beginning. Thank you, if you could just not refer to them.
Okay, the information is there for you to see. I will speak no further about it.
Thank you.
What I will point out is that the 2018 assessment has been appealed to the municipal board. So the decision of the Board of Revision at that time is awaiting scheduling at the municipal board. And we're looking at a significant increase over that value. So let's move on. The overall site area is a little over 5 acres. The collision center forms 15,646 square feet. The auto dealership, as stated, 12,356 square feet. Very much on the small side. The original building, 1997, was the automotive dealer at the front, with the collision center being added in 2009. Some photos for you. You can see the interior of the building. If you look at the showroom area, the top of page number 3, it is dated in terms of the finishing and build out and layout. Obviously, you can't fit very many cars in the front showroom there. This being a winter city, it's very important to have product to display inside for people to come and comfortably talk to the salespeople, to show them all of the features, etc. Otherwise, you're out on the lot, which is undersized in this case, to look at vehicles. So the number of cars that they can squeeze into this particular showroom is very much on the low side. You then have the service area at the back, relatively standard, and a couple of photos of the various office areas. There's further description for you there of the building on page number 5 and 6, and we move on to the collision center on page number 6. The collision center is relatively straightforward as well. There is not a particular, there's not actually a there is not a picture of the collision center here, unfortunately. So just to describe it, there's a small office reception area, quite small, as you walk in the main doors on the southwest corner, and the remainder of the property is devoted to the collision center operation itself. So there's a number of, obviously, entry bays, etc., and the hoists and all the other materials that they need to do the job. The site I've already described, showing on page number 8, the location. Looking at the automotive dealership industry in Winnipeg, there are 3, maybe 4, or becoming 4, I guess, centers of automotive sales. The first being the Point West Auto Park, located to the west of the perimeter. It's a dedicated auto park. It is peripheral to the city, far away, essentially probably the least valuable of the locations. You then have the Waverly Auto Mall, located in the southwest. Significant operation on both sides of Waverly, with many brands in one location. And then you have Regent Avenue. Regent Avenue, obviously not an auto mall, but it has a conglomeration of different brands that have chosen to locate in close proximity to each other. Now, this is similar in nature to retail, in that you want to locate where customers have the opportunity to see the variety of options that they have on the marketplace. So that's why that's done. Conglomeration is a positive in that sense. So you don't see the dealerships downtown or on Main Street or on the highway as much anymore. They tend to have transitioned. Indeed, The property that was being discussed earlier, the Subaru dealership, was bought and leased leased and then bought on a agreement struck up front by the Pattison Group, with the understanding that they were moving that dealership as soon as they'd exercised their right to purchase the property. They were moving it over to the Waverly Auto Mall, which indeed they have done. So the intent, and very clearly with regard to that site, was the owner of that property was cashing out by getting an above market rent for a 3-year period, and then they were getting paid out by an above market purchase price pre-agreed at the beginning of that. Immediately after, they moved the dealership to the Waverly Auto Mall, and that site is going to be used for other uses, not automotive. Pardon me. That's a bit of background. You also see some of the upper scale brands such as Audi, Mercedes, etc. moving into the area where a significant number of their customers are located in and around the Kenaston corridor. So you have new dealerships popping up there. Now, that's essentially their only relation to big box retail. As stated, the structures are entirely different. You could not take a big box retail tenant and move them into an auto dealership. It's not structured the same. They essentially end roughly a third of the way back where the office and retail end. There's a wall there, and then you have the service area beyond, which is essentially an industrial box or service center as our other garages. So there's really no relation in that way. The other way in which they're not related is the productivity of that real estate. You have higher ceilings and essentially call it 90% of the floor being dedicated to the sale of retail products in big box retail, entirely different from what the case is with automotive dealerships. Now, the other point with regard to retail versus automotive is they're essentially stating that one is selling products, the other is selling products, so they're equivalent. Well, that's not the case. In the automotive world, the sale of new cars is actually the fourth most valuable component of the automotive business. The first most valuable is automotive collision repair. So in that case, we do have a center devoted to that here. That doesn't make this unusual, but we do have that on site. The second most valuable section, sorry, I came in with my notes and I've moved it somewhat, is used cars and financing. Financing obviously is a driver of significant revenue to the dealers. Following that, you have servicing. So if you look at these structures, you have essentially, call it 60 to 75% of the building being devoted to servicing. That's your third most productive business line, essentially. And following that, you then have the sale of new cars. Now, they're nice and shiny, and that's what they devote all the money to when they redo these centers to make it match their new branding and have nice tile and glitzy finishes, etc. They need to move their product. Yes, it's important to sell those, but they don't make a lot of money on the sale of the actual cars themselves. It's the remainder of the product. Now, we're not valuing the business. We're valuing the real estate. So we're not doing a value in use. So we're not looking at what is this dealership worth if we're buying the dealership on the marketplace. We're looking at the real estate itself. So there is no comparison between big box retail and no direct comparison between big box retail and automotive dealerships themselves. There, you can consider that obviously in the marketplace, automotive dealers nearly exclusively are owner occupied, so there are no real arm's length leases out there. There's a few subleases and things of that nature. There's a repurposed motorcycle dealership that has a true lease on it, etc. But there's no actual arm's length full line automotive dealership leases on which to rely upon out there. So you do need to come up with a methodology for assigning rent to these places. So is big box the one to rely upon when you have significant investment by owners to match the specific branding and build out of the requirements of Chapters or Michaels or any of those other Canadian Tires, Walmarts, etc. There's an entirely different economic basis for developing those. Now, the other point in developing big box retail and then locating immediately on the same site or in adjacent sites, if you look at the, say, Kenaston, McGillivray, you've got 3 or 4 or 5 different individual ownerships there, but it's a power center overall, essentially. It drives a huge number of shoppers there to take advantage of all of the shopping. That's a very different thing than going to Regent to look at cars, and produces a significantly different value out of that real estate. So I may have gotten slightly off track there and going on. A little bit further with regard to the automotive industry. I'll just direct you to my page number 10, and I think I probably have some material on this in the addenda of each of these briefs as well. Looking at the automotive industry itself, it is going through certainly a period of uncertainty and revision driven by a number of factors. The shift to online shopping is very dramatic in North America overall, and indeed worldwide, whether that be other retail forms or auto dealership. If you look for a car now, you don't have to go on site to look at all of the features. You go online, you look at it, you can even do a bit of shopping around with regard to pricing between one dealer and another before you ever go on site and say, I want to try car X with these features in it. You already know essentially what you want before you go to the dealership and what your different options are. You've compared different brands and different models, etc. So your access to information is significantly better. So the need for having that store there is significantly lessened, and indeed the automotive brands are looking at a shift to less dealers, so less need for real estate, bigger dealers, so larger dealerships themselves, but many fewer of them. And they're going to essentially become distribution centers is what they're looking at. So they'll have nice areas in the front, etc., customer relations, all of those things, but they're not going to be 5 different GM dealerships across the city, etc. They're going to consolidate. That seems to be the direction that it's going. This is already happening in Europe. Indeed, Amazon has entered the automotive sales market in Europe. They are looking at the North American market, and they would bring their wealth of capital and knowledge for lower pricing and faster product delivery, etc. So they would institute a completely different model of sales, which would be bigger, and certainly drive down margins, etc., for others in the marketplace. This obviously has a depressing effect on the overall dealership market, and then the need for that particular type of real estate. The market for new vehicle sales was essentially flat in the last period, as well as described by auto industry executives. That's some background. Let's move on to the valuation, and I promise you that we will go relatively quickly through the remainder of them. Now, in assigning fair market rent, we can't rely on other automotive dealers out there because there are essentially no arm's length ones. As mentioned, there's some subleases and things of that nature. There's a land lease at the corner of Ness, I believe it is, or Moray rather. We're not relying upon that. What we have attempted to do is say, okay, we have a service area. We'll look at automotive service leases for that portion of the building. And we have what's essentially a showroom retail section at the front. And we'll look at that type of product for leases in order to arrive at a fair value. So looking at the automotive sector, page number 12, I've given you 19 leases here. They vary in terms of size and location and age. Obviously, we're not saying they're all identical to the subject or located right nearby, but these are all service centers, so the use is the same. If you look at the range of them, we go down to a low of $6.50 up to a high of roughly $12.50 a square foot. That particular one is actually stated incorrectly, the 3680 Pembina, and I had submitted this, didn't have the opportunity to change it. It's not 3680 Pembina, it's 3680 Portage. And the area is not 7,200 square feet, it's more like 7,700 square feet, which would drive down your rental rate again into the $10, $11 range. Number 8 there, 231 Oak Point Highway. This is the former Harley Davidson dealership on Oak Point Highway up in the northwest. Nice building, built as a dealership for Harley Davidson, so a little bit different. Has a smaller service area, smaller building overall. The location would be inferior to the subject. But they have an auto dealer that has moved in there as an arm's length transaction, selling used vehicles in 2017 at $7 a square foot on a 5-year lease term. Building built in 1990. Now, that's dealership component. If we look at the other service ones, we have South Glen Motors and Collision, Osborne Auto Center, South Osborne, 1239, Penner Auto Service on 208 St. Anne's, $9.22 a square foot. Generally, we're looking for auto service in that 9 to 10 to 1050 range in general for that type of use. For the most recent available leases, you can see we have leases in the 2018, 2017 timeframe for this as well. Happy to go through those in more detail if you wish. I do have the information with regard to them. So that's one portion of the building, guiding you towards that kind of $9 to $10.50 a square foot range. It's also the majority of the building. Call it, again, 60 to 75%. Then we have the showroom retail. So what can we compare the front of an automotive dealer to that would be fair? Well, if you look at Flex Warehouse and modern developments in good locations that have that Flex Warehouse structure to them, those would be fair comparisons to the subject. So looking at my page number 13, 400 Fort White Way. If you head immediately west of Costco on McGilvery, 400 Fort White Way is located just down McGilvery. Very modern, built in 2012. High ceilings, Flex Warehouse, and it has a number of office slash retail slash that type of use in that facility. We have Enns Brothers is located there. They have a significant portion of office in their section. Start date of 2013, a lease of $11 a square foot on a 5-year term. Sky Zone, which just went out of business, 10-year lease in 2013 at $11.90 a square foot. Moving eastwards, 996 Lorimer, so this is located between Kenaston and Waverly in that, call it in that IKEA area. We have a Dynasty Bathrooms location, 996 Lorimer, built in 2008, 5,000 square feet, 2016 lease at $13.10. Certainly more showroomy in nature than perhaps the last two. TransCanada Brewing, 1290 Kenaston. This is located immediately north of the Mercedes dealership on Kenaston. It has a significant brewery up front with a restaurant, etc., with some more industrial area at the back. 2015 full renovation of that building. It's essentially retail now. 2016 lease at $12 a square foot. Same site, Lux Barbecue, 2016 lease at $12.50 a square foot for a 10-year term. A couple of properties on Waverly that are essentially that same showroom retail, Superlight and the Floor Show, 2014 leases at $6 a square foot. 980 Lorimer, over 12,000 square feet, 2018 lease at $12 a square foot. This Lorimer, just so we're aware, it's there's a significant medical office building right on the corner of the front. A&S Homes has they're the developer of this property. They have their office in there. I'm trying to think of the other tenants that would be in there, but it's a showroom flex warehouse space, very well located in the southwest. There's others there that you can look at. So essentially, we're looking at that range of below $10 to slightly above $10 for the service center section, which is the majority of the building, to slightly higher rents for the front area of the building. So what we have done is consider the buildings themselves. Obviously, in this particular case, somewhat different than the other ones we have today. We have a small building, which is dated, and we have a separate collision center. So what we have done is assign an $11 a square foot rent to the auto dealership building and $10.50 a square foot to the collision center. This collision center is certainly a good quality collision center. It's a good size. It would be at the upper end of the range, $10.50. The auto dealer would be at the low end of the range at $11 a square foot. So that is our approach to the rental rate for the subject. The information with regard to the past is there on page 13, which we will skip over. Let's move on to vacancy. The issue of vacancy is, of course, a significant one. The city has made an adjustment in their model, which has reduced it. The dealerships themselves are very special use buildings. They're dedicated specifically to that one use. There is no real other use for them, and I will point to a couple of examples. The Winnipeg Honda location used to be on South Pembina, very far south, just inside, well, I think one light north of the perimeter highway on the west side. The owner moved that property to the Waverly Auto Mall, tried to get a tenant for that building for many, many years. Was impossible to do. They demolished the building, and just recently they have sold it, and it's going to be redeveloped into an entirely different multifamily development on that site. So there was no further use for that building. If you look at the building on Pembina Highway that is now Royal Sports, it used to be an automotive dealership. You can tell that by looking at it. It's interesting reuse of a building, I guess is how I would say it. If you walk through that, the demising is very oddball, and they've kind of, being a local operator, they've accepted essentially that this is a building that meets their lower rental needs or ownership needs, so they didn't pay a lot for it, and they operate out of there, but it's certainly not an ideal use of the space. Looking at the history of automotive dealers, we've had a number of brands obviously go out of business and come back. Saturn disappeared. There's a number of smaller ones that kind of hang on. He is not the strongest of operators, certainly. They're trying to expand their footprint, but you never know how it goes. There is very little reuse for these buildings other than operating them as is. There is consolidation that's happened between brands in the past in Point West and in other locations. We see that coming in the future as well. So 2% is a nominal vacancy in any category, whether it's multifamily or retail or office. If we look at vacancy for retail and industrial, essentially we're looking at 7% for industrial, and in that 4 to 6% range for retail. We've assigned 5% for the subject property. The expense allowance issue, I will trust that everybody has heard my commentary numerous times and that you're all on board with me, and we'll move on to the remainder of our presentation. I think we've established clearly with what we have presented and the detail that we have gone to that the non-recoverables are higher than being projected by the city at 2% and should be reinstated at the former level of an overall 7%, inclusive of structural as well as non-recoverable. Shortfall amount, we have used the city's amounts, which are in line with market, $6 for the auto dealer and $4.50 for the collision center. So let's move on to the capitalization rate. Now, before I look at it from our point of view, if you take into account the city's change in model, where they have reduced the expense allowance from an overall 7% to a level of 2%, if they're instituting that in their modeling and coming up with cap rates, which they will be, that is essentially inflating the net operating income at the end from the accepted history in the past with the city of Winnipeg and indeed in the marketplace itself. So they are adding essentially 5% to the net income, which would then drive a higher capitalization rate. Now, there are no sales of automotive dealers that we can rely on for cap rates. And what we're seeing here is a decrease in the cap rate from 7.5 to 7.15 over cycles. That it's simply incorrect. There is no evidence to rely on for that. Moving on, ourselves, obviously we can't rely on the sales of auto dealerships as they are sold as value in use. We have presented cap rates for two categories, retail and investment industrial. So the top chart on page number 16 is investment industrial sales. These properties were bought as investments, so they are true cap rate sales. We are looking at a range of 7 to roughly 8% for these properties. Again, they're quality properties, well tenanted, not a lot of vacancy, etc. They were not being repositioned in the marketplace or anything of that nature. So those are a good indicator of the broad range of investment sales for industrial. Now, retail is shown at the bottom. These were, again, well-tenanted retail centers. You can see that our range there, again, is in that 7 to roughly 7.5 range, with one higher at 9.1 on McPhillips, similar on industrial with one higher cap rate. So we're looking at that 7 to 8% range overall. If you look at the main market brokerages, their information is there on page 17. Taking into account that automotive dealers are in flux going forward, we don't have a set necessary need, as we have in the past for all of these dealerships across the city, very limited reuse for those properties. There is clearly a premium that needs to be applied to these in terms of risk. So we would put them at the upper end of that range that we're seeing. So we are at 8% as far as our cap rate for these properties. There's further information there for you to read if you wish. 8% is, we're not being aggressive on that. That is in line with what we see the market as now, and indeed where these properties were in prior cycles recently as well. The car dealership and the collision center are summarized on page 17 there for you. We've separated them out. Dealership, the 12,000 square feet, comes to $1,455,000, and the collision center to $1,770,000, so a total market value of $3,225,000. Now we've combined the two as they are on the one property, and you're buying both as they're not on different titles, etc. The remainder of the property we've simply added in, so our final market value is $5,255,000. The addendum materials include the income and expense, the Colliers and C.B. Richard Ellis information, supportive decisions, which we're not supposed to include now. And at the back of the brief, and I think this is an important part, I'm not going to speak to it in great detail, but when I was referring to the shift in the auto dealership market, there's a number of articles that I presented here at the back of the brief that specifically detail those changes that are happening and that they see coming in the next very short while. So that information is there for you to see, as well as information at the very back of the brief that I would hope you would take into consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Although we haven't asked questions yet, we're just going to take a brief 2-minute.
Sorry, yeah, I just gotta write it down or else I'll forget.
I'd like to call this meeting back to order, and I believe we are at questions. Ms. Santucci?
Thank you. My first question is in regard to page 13. It was just in regards to comparables 6 and 7, just if they possibly skewed the chart a bit. When I looked at those ones, I couldn't quite determine if there was a retail component to those comparables.
Right, yeah, that's certainly fair. So we're looking at super light lighting and the floor show in 1036 Waverly. So I included those because they are retail showrooms in well-located industrial. Now, certainly the rental rates that they had in those leases at just over $6 a square foot. We're not placing a great deal of reliance on those, but we are showing that they're well located in the southwest, so there are a variety of ranges. But generally speaking, we're going to see rental rates higher than that.
Okay. And then I think you spoke to the region area. Did you say it was not a power center? Or?
Well, so if we look at, from the auto dealer perspective, you've got Point West, you've got Waverly, and you've got Region, which are your three kind of centers, not power centers, but two of them are auto malls, and then you have the strip of Region. So certainly it is a conglomeration, but the retail power center on Region would be considerably west of where the dealers are located.
Okay. But it would be the only area in that northeast quadrant of the city that would have a large number of dealerships?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. In regards to vacancy on your page 14, so you just kind of looked at industrial and retail and came to the 5% from kind of reviewing both, is that?
In looking at the two of them, yes, it
Okay.
seems to be an appropriate level.
Okay. And then just in regards to capitalization rates on page 16, a majority of the capitalization rates are under 7.6. I think there's only 2 over 8. So are you saying, I guess, that there's that much more risk involved with a car dealership than industrial, retail? Is that how you kind of came to your 8?
There is, yes, and I've gone through a number of those points, obviously, here. We'll look at, I wasn't going to refer to them necessarily, but we'll just look at it on page 16. So there's a number of things that you would look at, those being building size, building to land ratio, age of the improvements, location, date of sale, etc. Taking out, you also have issues such as land configuration, location on the site, building design layout, tenancy strength, land use restrictions, etc. So for automotive dealerships, I think it's fairly instructive if you look at the investment world. You don't see an automotive real estate investment trust where they buy up dealerships across the country as you do in retail and or industrial or office. That is because the realty is considered more risky, as there is no other specific use for that property other than these particular dealers. And we see a shift happening in that market going forward and at the current time.
And then would you agree that the 2 that are over 8% are 3 years prior to the reference date?
I would, yes.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boraski?
You might have said it, but I missed, what was the reason why neither the auto dealership or the collision center can make use of what appears to be vacant land back of the gas bar?
That's the gas bar site itself, so they have the use of the area, well, it's essentially, and I've been there many times. I cannot recall if that's, I think it's fenced or they have a barrier of some type at the back of that site.
But it's all owned by McGill Stevenson?
The entire site is owned by the ownership group, which is McGill Stevenson, but the area of, that area of the overall site is dedicated under lease to the co-op. And the co-op is the gas bar, the C-store, and the car wash. So they can't store their cars on there.
So the co-op leases that whole area,
Right,
including the area back of the gas bar.
that's right. So it
They don't
reduces-
use it?
It reduces the effective size of the site for the remainder of the
Is
occupants.
that surplus land, excess land?
No, it's not surplus land.
Otherwise vacant land. If I look at the picture on the front here, next door, there's a Birchwood something or other, although I can't read what the rest of that is. What is that?
That is actually a building that has been demolished that we're going to deal with very shortly. It was a used car center, Ford used car center.
And there is another building in this photo behind that one. What is that building?
That is a separate collision center on a separate roll number that has been out of use for a number of years. It's not an active business.
And who owns those 2 properties?
Birchwood owns both of those properties. Now, if we're going where I think we're going, which is the land issue, they have land issues on those sites as well. And maybe I didn't mention this, and I think I may have briefly mentioned that I have a former RV dealership that I deal with on behalf of Birchwood, which is located just off of the #1 highway as you head out of the city on a road called Lakeside, just past Fun Mountain and that. They bought that property because they needed land on which to store vehicles for their Regent dealership. And they were unable to get land that was paved, suitable to park cars on anywhere closer. So they bought this site way off on Lakeside, just off of the number 1 on which to store their cars, because they don't have enough room on their sites on Regent.
Currently, that building that says Birchwood something on it, that's been torn down.
Correct?
The building behind is functionally obsolete.
Yes.
You basically said that the dealership on the subject is functionally obsolete. All this land is owned by the same owner.
Mhm.
Like, disabuse me of the notion that this is a valuable land for a new dealership when you combine it.
So you're valuing different things.
Mhm.
What we're valuing is the roll number and the title as it is. So this property that we're dealing with here is one title. We're not valuing its potential combination with any other properties. And indeed, that is how the legislation is. We're not looking at any potential future use of the property. We're valuing the property as it is on
Isn't
site.
that what a cap rate is
for
though?
today.
It's an estimation of risk, which is the future.
So two things. Capitalization rate, if we're looking at developing cap rates for properties that have sold, we're looking at the property as it sells, and if it has any immediate change to that income stream shortly thereafter, obviously that would get taken into account, because if you're buying the property, you're looking at what you're going to receive. So yes, you would develop your cap rate in that manner. Now, no, there would be no application of a lower capitalization rate, thinking that, well, we can tear down these buildings and build a larger center in combining more than one property. They're already building on this other site next door where the building was torn down, so there is no combination of entities there.
One other question. So the collision business is the most lucrative. Does that lead to it having relatively high NOI?
No.
It doesn't.
No, the realty, so looking at collision centers, if you build a modern one, and this is relatively modern, you're going to drive the upper end of that rental rate scale for what a collision center would be based on the size and location and that. And that's where we're at that $11 a square foot for a collision center type of location. As they get bigger, obviously you're not, it's not a 3,000 square foot service center on South Osborne where you're gonna get $13 or $14. It's going to be somewhat less than that based on the size, etc. But at the upper end of what you would get for a collision center. So it gets certainly a strong return on it, but not in the relation to the retail world, say.
That's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread.
With your experience in the dealership business, what's the sort of longevity of a building? Do you see them going pre-1950s, or is there a line there? I know they're always refurbishing, but there is an absolute end to a life of a building, hey?
Somewhat, yes. So we'll deal with a couple of others that are having some reconstruction done here, etc. This, it's interesting, right? Because this building was built for, or rather the dealership here was built for Saturn, and Saturn was a small, somewhat of a startup back in the 80s, I'm going to say. So the size that they built then was, a little over 12,000 square feet. Doesn't fit today's model at all. What you see these generally turning into is perhaps used car dealers, and used car dealers are not going to pay either a lot for acquiring a property or a lot to lease the property to to sell their cars out of. I think we may have had a few examples of that in our leases there, so, certainly an older dealership is going to have lower ceilings, inferior layout. They're probably going to be located more towards the front of the site rather than the rear, so you don't get the same display of the product that you want at the front when people are driving by, et cetera.
Smaller square footage, I think
Smaller
you
square
said.
footage. So I don't know if there's a line in the sand, but certainly your buildings would deteriorate in terms of condition and utility over time.
I'm thinking of coming here into the 70s, early 70s, and I don't see many dealerships around that were here in those.
From that time frame.
So 60, 70 years would be an outside parameter. Not that they can't be used for something else later, as we know. You said you've mentioned a couple, and they're marginal use.
They're marginal uses.
The functional use of the building as a dealership, 50 to 70 years.
I think that would be a very optimistic
Yeah.
timeframe. It would be a lot less than that, I would tend to say.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Did you have a chance to inspect?
I have, yes.
Okay, did you take the photos in your booth?
I did indeed, yes. Now, I will say that I didn't walk through this one in this cycle, but it has not changed.
Okay. So page 3 of your booth, top page, top picture.
Yeah.
I think you had stated earlier that was the showroom.
That is the showroom, yes. You can see the offices at the rear of it there,
Right.
and then some cubicles on the front.
So literally, it looks as though they have 2 cars?
Uh,
Is there another, because then they've got, it looks like a display of tires.
I'd be stretching my memory. I only see 2 cars, but there might be 2, 3 there.
Okay.
But it's generally a small area for display.
It's very limited.
Yeah.
In regards to your vacancy, the 4 and 6% that you spoke about in regards to retail and the 7 for industrial, is that from the Johnson report?
Let me just flip to that page, yeah. The industrial vacancy rates that we were stating there are from the Johnson report, as is the retail. So in looking at 2%, I mean, we're generally under what a multifamily vacancy rate would be at that level. It's virtually nothing. Doesn't account for that risk that the building will be vacant, because when they are vacant, they're vacant for a considerable period of time. So we're simply putting it in line with similar categories.
Okay. Thank you, that's all my questions. Any wish for a summation on this property?
Thank you.
No thanks. So, what does that get us to?
Gets us to 1401 and the 2019 set. So, Ms. Santucci, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. This is file number 19-5014, roll number 04007-002-900. Address is 1401 Region Avenue West. So this is a dealership. We had issued a supplemental assessment in September. It's effective January 1st, 2019. And it was due to some work done through permit value, and I'll get to that. So if we turn to page 2, just an aerial shot of the dealership. There's 2 buildings on this roll number, and the bottom is the exterior dealership, and the building to the left. On page 3, I have some updated interior photos taken. These are from 2019. I'm just showing the condition of the building. So on page 3, we just have some of the showroom. On page 4, some of the waiting room area, parts area. And there was no photos of the Service Center. On page 5, the request for income and expense information, subject sale history, subject property leases just shows owner occupied. On page 6, the vehicle dealership income workup. So we have 25,944 square feet at $12.40 and 6,677 square feet at $13.13. And a blended rate of $12.55. So again, we're using the 2% vacancy. So for this one, the 7%, the 2% non-recoverables, 5% for management, 2019, and the shortfall of $5.50 per square foot. Come up with a net operating income of $369,516. Capitalization rate of 7.5%, and a capitalized value of $4,927,000. On page 7, these were just the big box store rents we used for 2019. So similar to what we've already gone over today. Page 8 is the income value summary. Page 9 is the model drive capitalization rates effective April 1st, 2016. 10 is the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts, and on page 11 is the 2015 income and expense questionnaire, just to show it's fully owner occupied. And on page 15, I have included the permit. Just interior, exterior alterations to a dealership. There was demolition and construction of interior partitions and for new office space, cosmetic work. And page 16, just some more information in regards to what was done. 17, just showing the provided cost of construction. Page 18, just to show the area that was worked on. So the front portion of the building there, the part that was grayed was where the work was done. And I can speak to, in the notes it says renovated front desk, waiting area showrooms, inspected with the manager of the operations. Also spoke with the director. It was completed in late 2018. We added it for January 1st, 2019. And don't think there was any more comments. So my recommendation today is to maintain the 2019 assessed value of the $4,927,000. Thank you. That's my presentation.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Smith?
Yes, I do have, pardon me, I do have a few. So the permit, and I did inspect the property just a couple of weeks ago. So I'm looking at your very back page there, the grade area.
Yes.
So I did the walkthrough with the general manager, et cetera, and that the area on the very southern end of, or the bottom end of your chart there, that's the drive-through bay. That area is not being renovated. Hasn't been renovated, and they've dropped that, any renovation plan for that, so that hasn't changed whatsoever.
Okay, I didn't say the drive-through bay was renovated.
Okay, so yeah, the drive-through is not renovated. So the renovation is, as stated, some interior finishes, some changes to some office demising, et cetera. So that would be in the retail portion
Yes.
up front there?
And the showroom offices, yes.
Okay. When I look at the valuation of the property for this versus the same time frame, the original valuation of it prior to the time frame, the cap rate has dropped from 7.8 to 7.5%. Is that simply from the renovation, adjusting the time frame for the model essentially.
You're saying from the original appeal, the cap rate has changed?
So we appealed, obviously, this property in the 2018-19 cycle, and the cap rate for the property at that time, which is the same time frame we're
Mhm.
dealing with, so we're not out of bounds here, was 7.8%. And now, subsequent to a little renovation of the showroom, tile, paint, a few office changes, it's now 7.5%.
It could be doing, they changed the effective year build
So
for the building, so
probably
that
the year build,
would be a
right?
parameter would
Okay.
change it.
So that would be what would change that cap rate likely?
Yes.
Okay. I have no further questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boreski?
Sorry, you probably covered this and I missed it. 7%
Yes.
expenses including management.
Yes.
What's different about this one?
So we have the 2% for the non-recoverable and then the 5% for the management. And that would just be what we did for 2018-19.
Different year.
2019, is it?
Okay. That's all my questions.
Question?
Sure. Just one. I'm confused, and maybe I missed something on page 1113. They identified 41,000 square feet versus your 32. It's done on 2 pages. Is that
It's just to separate, well, they have separated the 2 buildings, it looks like, and even when you add up, let's see, because the 2 numbers on the mailer, looks like there's 38,000 square feet, 9,000 square feet. I'm not sure where they came up with their numbers. The numbers we're using for the leasable area are just based on previous permits and what we have in our system for the building areas, so if,
maybe Mr. Smith can shed some
yeah,
light on
I'm
that
not sure about that.
when we get to his questions.
Sometimes as well, when it's owner occupied, they put different numbers based on, like, I include like the site area even sometimes, I'm not sure,
That's
but
often that.
yeah.
They're
I would
pretty
say,
accurate.
yeah.
They know their buildings. But it is 41,650
Yeah,
on
and then,
page 13, and I can't read. I
can't
guess
really-
it's the used car building that's the
Mhm.
additional 9,
yeah.
so you're working with,
I
out
just,
to that number, the used car building. But that is included in the 5 buildings on your specs on page 1.
mhm.
You see 5 buildings.
From my understanding, when we have, if there's 2 buildings on the property and they're both used for car-related purposes, we'd have, I'm guessing ours is the 25,000 for the one building and then the 6,600 for the other building. So I'm not sure where they came up with their numbers for the separate,
Are you thinking the second building being this,
the 1411, just to
What?
the left.
yeah, what they call the used car, I think?
Mhm. So that would be our second premise, which is 2425 premise ID at the 6,677 square feet.
Mhm. So you don't know where the 9,000 comes from?
No.
Okay, we'll wait for Mrs. Smith then.
Kevin, do you mind, just so that I can clear up some confusion, because I'll just get worse and worse if I don't get this
Go ahead.
clarified. We're dealing with a sup
Yes.
here, and we're dealing with the normal roll entry as well, the normal roll, 2020 roll.
Mhm.
Are we dealing with file number 195014 right now?
Yes.
And that is not the sup?
This is the SUP for 2019, so there was the original 19 value was appealed, we reissued this, and then for 2020, the next one, it was never dealt with, it was just appealed with the SUP, so, is there,
Or we're dealing with a sup, we're dealing with 2 sups?
no,
No,
just the,
just the
so
one.
2020 was never heard, so we were just doing that one fresh. But this one technically was already heard in 2018 with the old information.
Well, on the cover sheet for 5014, nature of application is to revise the 2019 supplementary realty assessment. file 5015 says to revise the 2020 supplementary realty assessment.
A preview letter might have been issued for 2020 originally, and then, I'm not sure.
But is this correct, that we're dealing with two supplementaries, or are we dealing with one supplementary and the realty roll?
That's my understanding.
But that's not
Because
what
of
these
the
cover
renovation.
sheets say.
Okay.
To my knowledge, maybe out of order here, but to my knowledge, the SUP is simply for 2019, and the 2020 is the original 2020. Now, am I wrong there?
I would think, so if we, let me see when we issued this.
So wouldn't we have a 2019 sup based on 2016
Yes.
reference date? And then we have the 2020 roll based on
Right.
April 1st.
Right.
Okay, well, I got thrown off by both of these saying supplementary on the cover sheet.
Well, technically, there would have
Should
been
say
a
Yeah.
different 2020 value mailed out, and this one is the subbed value, it just hasn't been heard, so it kind of sounds.
Okay, well then, if I'm correct in thinking it's a 19 sup, a 20 normal, then
This-
if I'm looking at 5014 and that's the normal, that one should not have 7% expenses. It's the sup that has the expenses, which is then 5015, or have I got those? Yeah, see, like, wait a minute. Okay, 5014 is the sup.
The 2019.
Yes.
This is the sup.
So that could have the
5014 is sup, and so the cover sheet should not say to revise the 2019 sup. Wait a minute.
Mine doesn't actually say that.
Our cover does.
Yours does?
Yeah, I think the cover is maybe misstated. It should say what this says, go to the first one.
But then, it's the next one, Mark, that says 2020 sub, and it's not a sub.
And it's not sup, so
It's
we
the
just,
next part.
all right, so I
It should
just,
just say this.
the
Yeah.
realty
It
assessment,
should
that's
just
a
say the
strike out.
2020 realty.
All right,
Comes
I'm with you now.
the attorney's tax.
No, I'm
Why would it
confused.
say that?
I don't know, it comes from,
We just take that out.
I just couldn't believe that for 2020, the assessor was going for 7% here.
I mean, I don't make those myself, they are generated.
Katie is saying it comes from their system, that it's generated, so.
Okay, we better fix that one.
So.
All right, now I know what page to be on.
Can you ask any questions? Were you finished?
I think I did. Did I ask a question? I'm lost now.
Yeah.
I did ask a question. No, I'm done, thank you.
Ms. Santucci, just wondering, on your brief, back to the page 15 of the permit detail, and there's a $650,000 construction declaration,
Yes.
and I'm asking this because of something Mr. Smith had said previously. Was all of that spent? Because he was talking about,
So when the director spoke to our employee, it said that it was $650,000 permit, $50,000 was being reserved for possible further changes. That was the only note they had.
thank you.
Didn't have a date or anything to when it would be done, but.
So, 600,000
Just
was.
he agreed
was
that the 600,000 was
spent.
spent.
All right. So then, that leads me to ask you, did you inspect?
I did not, my coworker who did the changes inspected.
Okay. Any field notes?
Just
And-
in regarding to what was actually done. So the reference to the front desk, the waiting area, the showroom, the office space, and not to the other portions of the building.
Okay. And I'm assuming your coworker took the pictures?
I cannot remember. I didn't write that down.
It's just, there's a date
I
on
can't
here.
remember if I got these from the website or my coworker. I've looked at so many that I'm sorry.
That is all my questions, thank you. Mr. Smith.
Okay, so let's just deal with the renovation to start with. I'll just get you to flip to the very back page of the city's brief there, just for ease of illustration. Turn it sideways, this is Regent, this is the side street running back to the property behind. The front section here is the retail showroom slash office, and this is a drive-through service bay. So they had originally planned to put new tiling into the service bay. That has been taken out as far as any other changes to that service bay. Nothing is proceeding there. It was too expensive, they're not doing it. So the only renovation has been to the showroom. To that end, the renovation of these places is driven by the brands themselves. So Honda says, this is our new look, you must change your building to match it, install these finishes to match our new corporate look, and if you don't, then you won't be our operator in the market there anymore, and we'll move it to somebody else, which they do on occasion if somebody does not comply. So it's driven by the brands themselves. I've been doing this since 2009, so in talking with Birchwood themselves, it doesn't actually drive more business to the dealers. They don't sell more cars because they have a nice new tile and finish in the showroom now. Might be more functional for them to have some nicer office space perhaps at the back with better demising, but the new look doesn't drive more business out of the front. It's purely a brand thing that the brands do, but it does not add to the real estate value. It's simply cosmetic. And to that end, and I misspoke earlier in that it was the McPhillips Street property that I wanted to show the difference to the showroom in. It's actually this one, the Honda dealership. I went out there after January 1st to have a look at the renovation to the property. If you look at my photos beginning on page 2, so at the bottom of page 2 is the property prior to renovation. So that's prior to the new look being put in place, new tiling, new paint, new offices, etc. So that's what it looked like. You're looking west there from the front desk. The top of page number 3 is the new look. Remarkably similar. Different tile on the floor. The ceiling is the same. They haven't made any changes there. The offices have glass walls at the rear of the showroom area now. That's essentially what you're looking at is the changes. So it's truly cosmetic. You're not going to see a great deal of difference. There was no problem with the tiles that were in place. They simply were required to replace them. So that's your front of the building. Then you have the service area at the back, the used car dealer. So let's look at the front. Your main building is that 25,000 plus square feet. The used auto dealer is the 6,000+ square feet. So the city is accurate in their number. I cannot speak to why they have $41,000, 41,000 square feet in there. It's not that size. I think they must have misread one of their numbers or something in translating it. If you go through the building attributes, this is accurate. So the older building is the used car dealer. That was the original building on site, built in 1986. That was the Honda dealer, and they made them build a new, larger one, which had a few sections that were added onto it, so it's now over 25,000 square feet. The old one is that 6,000+ square feet. So you've got two properties on site. Your land plan area ratio is, buildings on site rather, land plan area ratio is 4.68 to 1. It's certainly on the low side. Your older building would be similar in nature to the Kia dealership that we were just looking at, the former Saturn. I don't have a picture of the interior here. The front area is somewhat raised, which is unusual. It's more office in that front with the cars on the exterior, and then service area in the back. So it's really, really not applicable to today's dealership market. The rest of the description is on page 5. It's located on the north side of Regent, kind of kitty corner to where 1376 Regent was, that we were just dealing with, at the corner of Owen and Regent. So the site is shown on page number 6, location on page 7. Now, we're going back in time here, so I'm not going to walk through our retail or rather our lease comparables all that much. Suffice it to say, I combined the same type of properties onto one chart. So industrial and showroom retail, or automotive and showroom retail onto the comps that are shown on page number 10 then. 10 and 11 rather. Our range here for this property, the automotive section, $750 to a little over $11, with collision repair centers in that $7 to just over $11 range, with showroom retail flex warehouse in that $6 at the very low end up to $13 a square foot range. Now, looking at the subject property, the newer building is it's not entirely modern, but it's relatively nice. It has had a marginal renovation to the front that has somewhat of an impact on the rental rate applied. But then you have the used dealership adjacent to it as well, with the 6,600 square feet roughly. Not as valuable, not going to rent for as much. We've applied an overall rate encompassing the two of $11 a square foot. Our valuation for the property, you can move forward to page 12. We have our valuation for the 2018-19 timeframe adjacent to the city's valuation. Original valuation, I didn't have the new one from the SUP, so this is what it originally was. We have 5% vacancy in keeping with the stats, similar to now, the 7% allowance, same as the city, with the shortfall of $5.50 a square foot. Capitalization rates, somewhat, some of the same information, but a little bit different. If you look at the bottom of page 13, there's a little bit of text there that I haven't discussed. Again, there's no new cap rate evidence on automotive dealerships to indicate any lower cap rates. Certainly a change to the showroom is not going to drive the cap rate down by 0.3%. Simply puts it over the line in the model, so it gets a drop in the cap. In talking with mortgage financing professionals, they really saw no change in the marketplace with regard to a change in mortgage financing terms for automotive properties between that 2016 and 2018 assessment cycle. So you would see no shift in capitalization rates between that time frame based on a financing issue. The capitalization rate that we were applying in the 2018 assessment cycle was 8.5%. We have applied it in this case, which gives us our final market value of $3,624,000. The decisions in the 2018-19 timeframe on Regent for the dealers that we dealt with were at 8% in the Boardroom division. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Santucci?
No questions.
Mr. Boraski?
No questions.
Questions?
No questions. No.
just had one question, I don't know whether you can answer, it's more curiosity. When manufacturers are asking their dealers to upgrade, are they offering any type of incentive?
Incentive for them to do so? No. To
Or-
my knowledge, no. They don't participate in the cost of
Nothing,
change, no,
just directive.
just directive.
Thank you. Any wish for a summation?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
So we'll now move on to the same property for the roll year 2020. And Ms. Santucci?
Thank you. This is file number 19-5015, roll number 04007-002-900, 1401 Regent Avenue West. I guess we've gone over. Page 2 shows the aerial photos. Same photos as the previous one. Page 3 and 4 is the same interior photos. 5 just confirms owner occupied. Page 6 is our income workup for 2020. So we have a rental rate of $13.19 applied to the one space, $14.12 to the other, and we'll provide a blended rate of $13.38. And we have a vacancy of 2%, expenses of 2 for 2020, $6 shortfall, and overall capitalization rate of 7.15%, for an estimated value of $5,808,000. We've gone over the comparables on page 7, 8 I'll cross out, and 9 is just the income value summary, and page 10 is the model derived capitalization rates. And on page 12 is the 2017 income and expense questionnaire. So it looks more to have the normal leasable area on this one, fully owner occupied. And on page 16 is just those permits again. So, since we've gone over all that, my recommendation today would be to maintain the 2020 assessed value of the $5,808,000 for this property. Thank you, that's my presentation.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Smith?
I have no questions.
Mr. Boraski?
No questions.
Mr. Whitford?
Not a question, just a note. Square footage has changed in this one.
Yes.
I have 7,000 square feet roughly, so it's an interesting
Better.
anomaly. Better, closer to what, yeah, a little bit high.
Oh, in the
Sometimes
I&E.
it could be just that they're filling out so many, I don't know.
But there's still.
Yeah, there's still discrepancy.
That's right, they're not wrong. It's discrepancy. Thank you. No question.
Oh, this was the assistant.
And I have no questions, thank you. Mr. Smith?
Okay, so 1401 Regent Avenue West, again, same property we were just dealing with. It's 2 years hence. The will not describe the property further, the photos are the same. Moving on to the valuation, you have the same 2020 information that we presented on 1376 Regent. Again, if you look at the subject property, you're going to drive, being a more modern property, you're going to drive a slightly higher rental rate, likely on the full auto dealership of 25,000 and a lower one on the 6,000 plus square feet. That being said, again, we're looking at property that was built in '86 originally with a most recent build date, or an average date, I guess, of 2005 for the more modern dealership. It was built in stages and is not a 2005 building overall, certainly. So looking at the subject property, we have bumped our rate up to $11.50 a square foot for the subject property. Now, This is taking into account the overall size. We have 32,000+ square feet. Dealerships over 25,000 square feet are generally classed as the larger dealerships out there. They get considerably larger, but that's the general break point in the market. Below that, you may drive a slightly higher rental rate because of economies of scale. If you're only leasing, say, 18,000 square feet versus 32,000 square feet, you're likely to be paying a slightly higher rental rate in the market. It's standard appraisal theory and is borne out in the market. If we look at the shift in rental rates over time, again, we're not looking at auto dealers. When I look at properties that we handle on a regular basis from cycle to cycle, and I look at renewals, or I look at properties that have, or tenants that have steps built into their leases, you may see roughly a 50-cent increase over a 2-year span. Typically, you're not going to see more than that. If you see tenant on say a 5-year term, and it's all the same over that time frame, you'll get a bigger jump at the end of that. But generally over 2 years, you're going to see about a 50-cent increase in the marketplace as somewhat of a norm. Not all the time, it's not applicable to all properties, but as a general guideline, it's not a bad starting point. You're not going to see $2 and $3 jumps in rental rate over a short span of time. So looking at our overall valuation, let's just move forward to my page number 15. Similar to the 1376 Regent, we've summarized our valuation on page 15 side by side with the city's valuation. So we have an overall rental rate of $11.50 a square foot. Again, this is not the most modern of dealerships. It's one that has had a slight upgrade to the showroom area, which is really branding. Overall, the building's a bit older. Then you have the separate used car dealership to be taken into account too. $11.50 is a more than fair rental rate for that. The other parameters are the same. Obviously, the overall 7% expense allowance, including plus the shortfall, and our capitalization rate, similar to to what I stated for the 2019 SUP that we just did, was decided at 8%. We see no shift in the marketplace. We've assigned a cap rate of 8% for the subject property for the 2020 timeframe. So that gives us our final value of $4,021,000, and our addendum materials are the same. And open to questions.
Thank you.
No questions.
Mr. Perez?
No questions.
No.
I'm just wondering about your cap rate.
Yes.
Previously, it was 8.5, now you've got it down to 8.
Yes, well, we were given some guidance, I guess, by the Board of Revision in their decisions for that time frame, and we took that into account in what we applied to it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to 1300 Regent.
This is file number 19-604, roll number 090075572-100, 1300 Regent Avenue West. This was a car dealership built in 1986. It's come to our attention that it is no longer there. It's been demolished.
Which one are we doing? I'm
This
sorry.
is the
Sorry,
13 Is this the
1300.
right one I was thinking of?
No, it's the other way around.
Oh, okay. Did I write on the wrong one? Okay.
There's 1300 and
Never
1310
mind.
Regent West.
I had written on this one. I was
1300
confused.
still
Okay,
standing.
we're good.
Doing, okay.
The next one. So this is a car dealership, built in 1986. We have a leasable area of 32,425 square feet. The aerial photo on page 2 shows the dealership on the property, so it's to the left. We have an exterior photo, and on page 3, this is what I was saying. There is going to be new construction. Is this not the right one? Did I mix mine up?
Well, they're both
I have written
having
up.
some things done,
Okay.
which I'll
Perfect.
explain.
Okay, so I'll get to the new construction part of it. So the request for information received. We have some subject sale history, the most recent one being from 2012. We have a subject property leases just stating it's owner occupied. On page 4, the vehicle dealership Workup. So we have applied a rate of $12.06 per square foot. Again, we've used 2% for vacancy, 2% expenses, shortfalls at $6, and overall capitalization rates at 7.3%. So a bit higher on this one, probably due to the fact it's built in 1986. Estimated market value, $5,091,000, sorry. Page 5 is the comparables we've gone over. Cross out page 6 because I haven't been able to confirm any of that. And if we go to page 8, just the capitalization rates, model derived. And if we get to page 10, the income and expense questionnaire from 2017 just shows fully owner occupied. And if we turn to page 14, just in regards to the condition as of January 1st, 2020, we do have a partial permit foundation. It just states that there's still the inspection process. We don't have it as a closed permit. And that was the only permit I had found for this property. And page 15 is my addenda. So I think the applicant has a bit more information on what will be followed this permit for foundation. So my recommendation today is to maintain the 2020 assessed value of the $5,091,000. Thank you, that's my presentation.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Smith?
No, I have no questions.
Mr. Boraski?
No questions?
None from me.
And I have no questions. If you'd like to give us your brief, Mr. Smith.
Right, so let's flip to page number 6. Of my brief, gives you the aerial. So this property is still standing. It is only partially in use in that they are using the rear service area to continue automotive service for their clients, so that is still open and operating. The front showroom retail area at the front of the building is not currently being used for automotive sales. That portion of the business is going to be changed. They're demolishing that front section, and they are adding on to, I guess that would be the east side of the building. If you look at towards the right-hand side of your page there, they are going to be building the sales portion of the building on that side of the lot, and indeed that's what the permit refers to, the partial foundation. So all that's happened to date is some ground leveling work. Foundation is not in place or anything of that nature. They're preparing to do that work, and that's where the sales showroom will be built. As it stands, the building is as it sits, and that is what we're valuing. We're not valuing what it will be in the future. So right now we have, because obviously we have a 2-year assessment cycle, and we also have supplementary. So once that is done, we'll get a supplemental and it'll be reassessed, at which point there can be either an appeal or not an appeal. But we're not looking at the future right now. We're looking at what's on site. So, as stated, 32,425 square feet overall. Over 5,000 square feet of that is mezzanine area. Useful mezzanine area, office mezzanine, etc. The Page number 1, again, gives you some background on the property. Our overall land to plan area ratio for this particular property, at this point in time, is just under 7.67 to 1, so it is larger. They do have more on-site capacity for customers and storage and service, etc. on this particular site. The building, the original building, sales building, does date to 1986, and it is somewhat dated. If you look at our photos, beginning on page number 3 there, that's the showroom area. Obviously you can see lower ceilings, which you can see from the exterior of the building as well, older finishes inside, etc. So this is not, certainly not a modern dealership in its current build-out and or layout. We look at the number of cars that they would be able to fit into that front showroom area. Again, it's relatively minimal in terms of what one would wish for in a dealership in today's day and age. The description of the property is on page number 5. I'll let you go through that if you wish. Obviously, service area at the back with showroom at the front. I think it's instructive if you look at page number 6 to see the split in terms of the showroom office versus service at the back. You can see the discrepancy in size between the service and the showroom up front. So that is your general split in the majority of these buildings. And we can move on to the valuation itself. This particular property, obviously outdated. They're under instruction to build a new showroom portion. So the 1986 building is really not appropriate in today's market and will be removed shortly. It does have an impact, obviously, on the rent that could be achieved for that. For its subject purpose, we've used $11.50 a square foot for the subject property, giving us our potential rent. Again, there's information at the bottom of page 11 for you there. And our application of the other parameters is the same as with our other dealers in 2020. Let's move on to cap rates. It's been mentioned, why did we use 8%? Again, we had some information coming from the board prior that we did take into account in assigning our cap rate. It's not that we necessarily felt that cap rates have dropped for these type of properties. It's simply that we are taking into account some information that had been decided essentially. So we are in keeping with that. Certainly the cap rate is not going to fall in line with a standard retail investment or a standard industrial investment property. It's going to be higher than that for the reasons stated. Let's not go through those again. We apply our same 8% cap, which gives us our final market value of $3,996,000.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Santucci.
No questions.
Mr. Boreski.
No questions?
No questions, no?
I have a question. Sorry, I'm going to refer to the city's brief.
Sure.
They had a sale in February of 2012.
Right.
Prior to that, was this a Birchwood property?
It was not a Birchwood property prior to that, no. And to speak to the sale, just to answer your question, that's a value in use that you're looking at. It's not the acquisition simply of the realty. It's the value in use to the purchaser. They're essentially buying the right to be the dealership on that site and continue on.
Noted. Sorry, one further question. I don't know whether you're aware. This rebuild, was this directed by the manufacturer?
It was, yes.
Thank you, that's all my questions. We'll move on to 1310 Regent Avenue West.
Thank you. This is file number 19-610, roll number 09007573000. Address is 1310 Regent Avenue West. If you turn to page 2, this is the aerial shots from 2018. It just shows the building located on the property. Exterior photo on page 2 as well, no interior photos. The request for information, received response. We have the last subject sale history from 2012. Subject property, owner occupied. So I've included some land sales in here just in regards to, this is the property where the building no longer is. In regards to the possibility, I looked at the possibility of demoing the building, which didn't make sense because the land value reflected what the sales were reflecting. So it didn't make sense to demolish it and then just change it to what the current value would be anyways. So if we take the assessed value of $1,296,000 and divided by the 73,507 square feet, we get a rate of about $17.63. So I just threw the land sales in here as well, just to show why we weren't demoing the building, because our land value in our system is right around what the income value is.
Can you give me that number again?
So we have $17.36 a square foot.
70 or 17?
17,1763.
And that's taking your assessment?
And then dividing it by the land area without taking looking at the building.
And no demo costs built in?
No, that's just straight land value. So on page 4 is the vehicle dealership income stream we had on the property. We had $11.79 rental rate per square foot with their substandard basement. I can't speak. We have it on file. I have not seen the basement space here. We have a nominal rate of $3.99 per square foot. We have a blended rate of $10.80 per square foot. And again, we have the vacancy loss at 2, expenses at 2, shortfall at $6, and the overall capitalization rate at 7.3%. Again, this building is dated, I guess, in the realm of dealerships at a build of 1986. So we have the estimated value at the $1,296,000. On page 5 is the rental comparables we've gone over. Page 6 I'll cross out. And if we go to and compare on page 10 is the start of the 2017 income and expense questionnaire, just to show it's fully owner occupied. And on page 14 was the permits I could find just for the demolition. So it has a declared construction value of $75,000 to demolish 9,225 square feet. On page 15, there's a partial permit foundation for 3,051 square feet. No declared construction value on that one. But on page 16, we have the construct new for a 3,551 square meter 2-story auto dealership, and that's valued at $6 million. On page 17 is just my 2020 Board Revision addenda, and my recommendation today would be to maintain the 2020 assessed value of the $1,296,000. Thank you, that's my presentation.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Smith?
Yes, just with regard to the area, so this is not a property that you've had the chance to inspect, right? When
No.
When it was standing.
No.
So you wouldn't be aware that there was no basement in place there?
I was shocked when I saw the basement space, so
Yeah.
it was
So it's not
unsure.
basement, there is mezzanine space there that is not
Considered.
leasable space.
Okay.
And wouldn't be considered in it, so that's the 1176. So we're in agreement that we're we're establishing the market value based on the income of the property as
At
it
that,
was standing.
yes.
Okay, great. Those are all of my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boraski?
So there is no building here now?
Not, as the January 1st, 2020, but we haven't demolished it. Usually, if the time frame's close, when we do the new construction, we'll remove the old building and add the new one, I guess, based on the permits. But for this one here, we haven't demolished anything.
So what is the law here? Economically, we gotta look at April 1st, 2018. Physically, we have to look at what is present.
Yes.
What does that imply for how this is to be valued?
So as of the reference date, for what is physically there, there's nothing there. So I just spoke to the fact that if we were to demolish it and issue a sub, based on it just being land value, it would be pretty much the same value, was kind of my argument. But if the value were to have dropped, I would have issued a sub. But since it wouldn't drop, then that's why we're just gonna leave it until the new dealership comes on the roll.
So land only with no building is the same value as with the building there operating as a dealership?
Yes.
So the
In our
dealership is
system.
worth nothing?
Okay.
That's
well,
what our land, that's what our,
I'm sorry, but I'm confused here.
so from when I've looked at a bunch of them, a lot of the times the land value is higher on Regent. We have sales and that's kind of what we're dealing with here. Not all of them are like that, but our modeled land determines that that would be what it's worth.
That's all my questions.
Mr. Whitburn?
Nothing?
So sorry, I'm also somewhat confused about this because you're giving us a brief, page 2, with photos, but it does not exist.
No, I don't actually have any photos of it being demolished. The applicant let me know it was demolished, so when I was creating the brief, these are the photos from 2018. So as of January 1st, 2020 though, in our system, we didn't have any photos that showed it was demolished. I was just provided ones by the applicant,
Okay,
so.
so would that not lead you to, or saying you as a euphemism, to go out and inspect and then revise the brief? Make it sub-
So I took his word for it being gone.
Okay.
And then just reviewing in our system, because the planning, property, and development does have notes that say when demolition has occurred, so I did confirm through that way it was done. My only issue is do I issue a SUP for the same value? Because our land model shows that this would be a correct rate for it. So that was kind of my internal issue. If our land model would show the land is worth a lot less, then I would hypothetically have issued a SUP for lower. But if I'm going to take a building off and leave it at land value and it's the same, then it didn't seem like there was a point to issue the SUP. It would be just unnecessary paperwork.
Okay, then I have 2 quick questions. Page 3 of your brief in regards to the sale history.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a sale in February of 12 for $1,000,001. Was the purchaser Birchwood?
So it was the last one, it would be the Longboat Capital Inc. was the last purchaser, so the current owner. I don't know who they bought it from, it was an arm's length transaction, but it was dated, so I didn't.
Okay, and to the best of your knowledge, it was run as a dealership from 2012 until the when was it demolished? Do you know?
Just recently, I think, I don't have the exact date.
Okay, well, I'll ask the
Yes.
appellant. And to the best of your knowledge, there is another dealership being built on
It
top?
will be built, yes.
Okay, so then is there a contamination issue with the land?
No, just waiting on the construction to conclude, and once it's concluded, we'll most likely, if it's done in September this year, July this year, we'll issue a SUP once it's done, and we can get in there to confirm what's
Okay, because it looks like this, I'm trying to read this, it looks like there was a collision center here somewhere. Trying to read the signage here on page 2. Anyway,
I think it's pre-owned.
okay,
Yes.
and perhaps Mr. Smith can answer those questions, but thank you. Did you have a question?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
So, you were surprised by Mr. Smith's comment that the building was demolished?
Yeah, I didn't know based on, when I was creating my brief, I was just looking at our information, and I had saw the permit, I think it still
Yeah.
says inspections on the top, that's usually what I go by, cause that's,
August,
well, that one's actually closed, so
August
that.
2019, the demolished permit?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking
So,
about?
there was a October 8th, 2019,
Or October,
and
yeah.
then I usually just go by the Amanda status, the top, which would be, kind of, so that one, when I did look at the permits, this one is closed, there's just nothing, they're still constructing it, I guess, currently, but when I first got the property, I obviously just looked in our system at the photos and didn't realize it was demolished.
Okay, so, next question. You use the income approach to come to a value,
Yes,
and that's model driven.
the model driven, yes.
You did not use any, I'm asking questions
Yeah.
by inflection. Did you use any adjustments in the model numbers?
No, this would just be the model rates for the building that was there.
Yeah, so then you took that value that was established and you created a square foot value.
Yes, so I compared it to what our land value was in our system, which is the 17, it was right around there, so it wouldn't have, it was,
But we have no evidence from you on that value.
well, it
That's
was,
$73,
no,
other than what you've done.
just what I've said, so if I were to an issue sub, it would be, technically it was a bit higher, the land value, but I'm not gonna issue sub an increase based on higher land value, that makes some
Thank you
sense,
very
yeah,
much.
thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah, so just to address 2 points, so the sale that's shown in the brief, yes, it did sell to Birchwood Longboat Capital Inc., which is Birchwood. And as with prior property at 1300, it is a value in use that was purchased. They're buying the right to become the dealer essentially, so it's not a real estate transaction. As such, you're getting the right to become the ongoing dealer there. You can't buy the dealership branding, but that is how it's done. So it's baked into the sale prices of these. If you look at other transactions, they're exactly the same. You get very high values for real estate, which are not truly real estate sales. So that's the background on the sale. With regard to valuation of the subject property, yes, so the building has been demolished. The custom in doing the valuation of these is if the building is being demolished with a subsequent building planned for that site and then subsequently begun, there's no interim sub that's issued for when the building is gone. And then you get another sub for when the building is up. You get subbed when the new construction is complete. So that's what the city will be waiting on. At the time, current time, the building has been demolished and they're still doing site work. There is some element of foundation that is being poured at this point, but that's as far as they've gotten. There's no building on site. So we're both valuing it on the same basis as if the original building was still standing. So 1310. Just to address the collision center issue, so if you look at my page number 5, the dealership, which is a used car dealer, again, this was, I believe, this was the original Ford dealership, built in '87. On the front of that site, closest to Regent there, if you look at the back, different roll number, there is the collision center at the rear there. That is the one that's not operational anymore. There is a separate collision center to the west that Birchwood has. This one is not operating. The building's still there, but it's not being utilized, and it's on a different roll number. So that's just to clear up that background. So, subject property, built in 87, we have 8,049 square feet of main floor area. The mezzanine space is not leasable space, the ceiling is low, it's not built out as office, there's no utility of it, to it other than storage of files and tires and things like that with a ceiling that you can't really stand up in. This has been gone through in previous hearings and past cycles. It hasn't been corrected at this point in time, but the actual leasable area is the main floor area of 8,049. It's essentially been agreed to by other assessors in the past. No blame for assessor here today, she has not had that time to look at it or that background, but that is essentially what we're looking at, 8,049 square feet. The photos show you the dated nature of the original building with the minimal display space, the old finishes, the choppy nature of the layout, and your service area at the back on page 4. With regard to the valuation, building is built in 87. You can see our leases again on pages 9 and 10. This particular building, 8,000 square feet, it's really on the minimal side in terms of the size for a dealership. It's going to only be an auto used car dealership essentially. And given the minimal size of it, it's not 14,000 or 16 or 18,000 square feet, which would have some more utility to some dealers. It's 8,000 square feet, so we've assigned $11 a square foot. It's going to get a lesser rental rate on the marketplace. There is economies of scale, but they wouldn't factor into it when they get increasingly small and less utility to the market. Our other parameters remain the same as in our other valuations, and we have capped this at 8%, giving us our final market value of $948,000. As you can see, we're ever so slightly above the city's rental rate for the subject property. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Just a quick question in regards to the risk with the investment potential. If there's such high risks, why do they demolish and build new and spend all that money for a new dealership? Why don't they get out of it?
Why not fix it? So,
You gotta say goodbye.
you waited to the end, and now I have to talk about the auto market.
I'm curious.
So what you find in, and again, we're talking about business value here and real estate value. So we're looking at valuing the real estate, not the business, not the value in use. So what you find in the marketplace is conglomeration or agglomeration. You have to grow to survive. So Birchwood has grown significantly over time, probably the largest auto dealership owner in the city. You've got a few others that are of a significant size that have quite a number of dealers, but you don't have those one-offs anymore. They've grown, and that's the way that the business has gone. And they will, that is the business they're in. Obviously, they're going to continue in that business, but what we see going forward is the shift in the marketplace with the online retail issue driving a lesser need for the real estate, and indeed the shift to lesser dealers, larger dealers, distribution centers, the incorporation of Amazon and other entities such as that entering all markets. There's going to be, there's already becoming a lesser need for dealerships in the marketplace.
Thank you, that's all my questions.
So this is demolished, what is gonna go on on the site here?
They are building another dealership on site.
So the one to the east, is the current Ford one.
Ford.
And it's having the front demolished, and it is being added, going east.
Right.
We have the other 5 building site on the other side of the subject.
Yeah,
but the subject is going to have a car dealership rebuilt on it.
they had one particular brand that would fit on that site.
So new car dealerships can actually function on a site this small.
Well, not ideally, so don't take this out of context. They own the land, and they do have the surrounding land as well, right? So for the purposes of valuing the real estate for assessment, we're valuing this parcel with this building on it. We're not valuing the fact that they own the parcel next to it and the one next to that. It's what does this sell for on the market in a normal circumstance. It's not.
With all of its limitations,
It's-
then, that you have to assume apply to it.
Which limitations, I'm sorry?
Size.
Well, yes, with the size, so that is the case, yeah, it's not a big site.
And so you got Kia on one side, Ford on the other side, and this is something different.
It will be something different, yes.
That does not require much land.
Well, I didn't state that, it's that, and you're looking at, I feel like you're confusing two things
I am, I'm
there.
confused, yes.
So, forget the fact that, okay, let's look at what's actually happening. They're building a new dealership there. Birchwood owns all of that property, so they're not, the one to the east is just under 8, so they can store some of their product on that site. They also bought the property on Lakeside where they store the majority of their additional cars. This site is still
That
small.
doesn't get into accessory use
No,
topics
it
or
doesn't.
anything like that.
It does not. This, this site is small, so they're forced into accommodating their needs to store vehicles and have service area, et cetera, by utilizing what they have. Now, if they were to sell that property, if Birchwood was to sell that property on the market, they're selling 1.6 acres. They're not selling the ability to use their adjacent lands. It's just that property. So we're not valuing their business, we're not valuing their adjacent lands, we're valuing what that is. Otherwise, you're treating them differently and saying, you're Birchwood, you own all of this, you should take it all into account as one roll number, but it's not one roll number.
Given the agglomeration that's going on now, if they sold this to somebody else, presumably it's a fair-sized company that also has that ability then to store things someplace else.
I think if you were to sell this property as it is now, it would not be an auto dealer that would go on there, it would be a different use of some kind, given the size of the site.
Okay, that's all my questions.
I have none.
And I have none.
Thank you so much, everybody,
Thank you
for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Yes, we are gonna have a short 5-minute break.
I think it does. Oh, we just a little bit more.
So I'll sign this one.
Just a stretch.
This hearing back to order. We are going to move on to C-1700 Waverly. Unit
which
C.
one?
First one,
A,
Unit C, 1700 Waverly.
They're lined up
See.
a bit differently on the
See?
docket, but
Yeah.
well, they're A, B, and C.
Oh,
A, B,
she's
and
got
C.
them, she's got them CBA.
I could have switched.
Pretty, it's,
Is it helpful to you to go A, B, C?
yeah.
All right. So we'll start with item 9.
It's better, and also it's, we can expedite, A's an expediter. It's, because the market rents.
And there's
they're
extra,
very good.
extra info there too. Okay.
Oh, over there? All right. So panel, we're gonna go
Oh,
A, B,
I
C.
need this one.
So item 9.
That's right.
Item 9.
You guys swear, guys swear to. So please look at me.
Sid Story.
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and the truth, so
I
help
do,
you God?
I do.
Santucci, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. This is file number 19-4669, roll number 03065043300, address Unit A, 1700 Waverly Street. So we're dealing with a car dealership built in 1999, the effective year built 1999. We have a leasable area of 36,740 square feet. If you turn to page 2, aerial shot of property, so located in Waverly Automotive. Just the exterior photo. I don't have any interior photos on record and none to provide today. So on page 3, the request for information received. There's an older subject sale history. Subject property leases, just owner occupied. And on page 4, the vehicle dealership income workup. So we've applied a rate of $11.05 per square foot. Vacancy loss of 2%, expenses at 2, shortfall at $6 per square foot, and an overall capitalization rate of 7.15%. So we have an estimated market value of 5,391 square feet. So we've gone over the rental comparables, the big box comparables there. Page 6 I'll cross out. Again, I don't have full details on that. 7 is just the income value summary. 8, direct model drive capitalization rates. If we flip to page 10, the income and expense questionnaire, so it just shows it's fully owner occupied. Page 12, again, the tenant, which is the owner. And on page 14, just my Board of Revision addenda we've gone over, and my recommendation today is to maintain a 2020 assessed value of the $5,391,000. Thank you, that's our presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Story, any questions?
I think we've heard most of it. I'll just ask one or two quick questions just to kind of frame the rest of my position. You've indicated earlier that this would probably qualify as retail category,
Yeah.
although because auto
They're selling something.
dealerships don't have their own category with the city, correct? So it's retail. And we're all familiar with what happened where in the last cycle it was decided to look at this big box as an alternative.
Yes, an alternative
Principal
comparable.
substitution. And this year there's been some changes in that approach from the property owners, okay? So the 2% that you're using for vacancy in your model, there's a possibility that came about because it picked up rates, it didn't pick up a retail rate. A retail rate would be somewhere in the 4 to 6%. Is that a reasonable assumption?
I think what I've heard is that's the typical retail. I think we're still pulling, like some of, obviously we have the vehicle dealership parameters in our
Yeah.
models. So it's not a true, like, it wouldn't be the vacancy loss for retail, it would be under what we have for a vehicle dealership.
Right, okay. And then quickly, you haven't visited the sites,
No, I haven't been in this.
but somebody has, presumably from the
I
department, or
couldn't
no?
find a previous inspection note, and there was no pictures, so I can't speak to, we just have it as average quality, so that's what I was going off.
Okay. And you're aware, do your notes indicate, on page 3, the sale, that was a sale to the Gautier Group from Chrysler themselves?
I didn't speak to the sale because I didn't know like the full details. It seems that the auto ones are quite complex, so
Yes.
it's there because it's just generated through the brief, but.
Okay. And when we look at your cap rate study, the city's cap rate study,
Mhm.
on page 8 of your brief, again, there's no way that really captures auto dealerships in here, or
no.
even auto garages, vehicle garages.
We don't have a property type for those, no with.
But if you flip back to page 17 of your brief, and this was purportedly provided to the owners to give them some indication of how the city was developing cap rates by category.
Yes.
And under retail, you see that they range anywhere from 4.6 to 7.4, correct? Okay.
There's the one.
So the 7.4, and you're not aware what the cap rate for the most part used last cycle was on?
I'm not super familiar with the ones used and by age, just because I didn't do a lot of properties in that cycle, but I know the one we had on here was at, I think, 7.5%. or was it 7.8?
The
So
one
they,
you and I had?
previously, when we looked at the sub for the 19, so it did seem like the cap rates were higher for 18, if that's kind of,
Okay, well, okay, I'm not sure that's correct. That's what we've got here, okay. And what I'll do is I'll ask the board to just, I won't go through the situation of retail versus the car dealerships specifically. Actually, no more questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Berkey?
Well, since the page 17 cap rates have been raised, just want to clarify, make sure that I understand. This is for retail 5 examples.
Just examples for
It's-
additional
It's a
information.
really small
It's very
slice of
yeah.
the total population, in which there may be retails lower than 3.1 and higher than 7.4. Would that be correct?
Yes.
The only other question I've got is, and I'll bet you don't have any evidence to this, but just for the sake of the question, this property fronts onto Waverly,
Yes.
unlike most of the car dealerships. Consequently has very good visibility.
Yes.
You have to come to a stop at the red light there and stare at their cars and their signage and whatnot. Does that visibility translate at all into higher rent at that spot than anywhere else?
The location of the auto mall, there's no parameter that would make the rental rate higher for that. It would mostly, like, our rental rates were mostly based on size of building, year of the building, type of, like, property type class. There's nothing we could check off for better visibility for this type.
That's all.
Mr. McBride?
It's like,
So in regard,
Oh, I'm sorry.
did you have another question?
I was gonna ask when you're finished, if I could have one follow-up, I forgot.
Go ahead.
Okay. Are you aware that this particular property is on a condominium site?
I've been, people have explained to me how the auto malls are kind of set up. And from my understanding, the roadways, at least I'm speaking to another one, is like it's a condo title.
Yeah, it's
and
not a
everything.
street, it's
Yes.
a condo owns and is responsible for that road.
So that's about all I can speak to for the,
Are you aware that up until the previous cycle, that the tenants in those malls, including Points West and to Waverly, were allowed a deduction by the city for a capital replacement reserve, because they not only have to maintain the streets, hydrants, et cetera, they have to replace them down the road. Do you know why that particular deduction was taken away from the property owners?
I'm not sure, and I also am not super familiar with what was done in previous years, so
Okay.
I don't know why, if
Okay,
it
but
was.
you're aware there are condominium
Someone had
sites?
mentioned it to me, yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you, sorry, that was
No,
my question.
that's fine. Going back to your brief on page 17 with your cap rate evidence, can you tell me what is going on in these retail spaces? The 5 that are listed, Nick Phillips through to Jefferson?
I do not have details on them. They're just additional. I didn't think that these sites would be super applicable. They're obviously like quite low cap rates compared to what the subject has. I just know they're used as an additional evidence. I never calculated any of them. But I know, like, I think one of them on McPhillips is like a strip mall type of retail thing, so I can't speak to the tenants in them, I'm sorry. I don't have that.
Okay. So I think you've heard today that there is a shelf life to car dealerships, and would you agree with that?
Yeah, it seems that, I think the last one we looked at was about 30-something years old and going down,
Right.
so.
But the city is using retail cap rates.
Oh, no, we're not, we're using retail parameters for the
For-
comparables.
For comparables,
But
correct?
with the cap rates, we're not strictly using, I'm not sure what our model's looking at, but it's not strictly, I'm just saying,
Right, but
this
it's
is the most
using retail,
comparable.
so.
From my understanding of the model, I don't know how the cap rates were derived exactly for the vehicle dealership, but I don't think it was strictly based on these retail cap rates, because then we would probably have a much lower cap
No,
rate.
not on those, but they're comparing the dealerships to retail.
Yes, in the sense of they're selling something.
Right. That's all my questions, thank you.
30%?
Yes.
Okay, we'll go very quickly. Statement of issues, well, we agree on the rent at $11.05 a square foot. Seems reasonable. Consistent with what we've done in the past in this industry. And Mr. Smith's been doing it since 2009, I did McNaughts in 2003. So that was the very first one to go into that unit. The question about visibility is absolutely correct. 2 prime spots when the mall was envisioned, actually 4 prime spots for Danbury, of course, McNaught, Ford, and the Waverly, this one we're doing right now, which was Croydon. Yes, being on Waverly is infinitely better and should get you more, garner you more rent, it should. Nobody knows because there are no arm's length leases, but in theory it should. So we're in agreement with the city with respect to the $11.05, no argument. With respect to 2% that the city uses, they're trying to make, well, I'm going to suggest 4% is more reasonable because it is retail. We all know the state of retail. I told a story yesterday, somebody said there hasn't been much change in retail in the last few years. Well, Amazon did $60 billion in 2012 and it's going to do $358 for 2019. So the world is changing. And retail is, they're talking about 5,500 major chains closed in the United States in 2019, and there might be as many as 9,300 in the coming year. So there's some difficulty with retail because of online shopping, of course. So I think 4% is more realistic than 2%. To the best of my recollection, we got 5% a year ago, and there hasn't been any, there's no justification for any changes to that. We accept the shortfall rate, we'd like the management back, and then we come to the only thing we really have a big issue with the city with on this, is a cap rate. The city is using a cap rate of 7.15, but can't provide us anything to support it. We've asked them, I asked the assessor earlier, is it just coming off the city? But where are the sales? What supports this? The chair asked a question about the page 17. Out of page 17, based on our evaluation, the only thing that really is a typical retailer is a Maples Market. It's a neighborhood shopping center. It's 1271 Jefferson. It's got a 7.44 cap rate. And you'll hear buzzing around through the conversation that last cycle, cap rates in this car business were in the 8% range. Some were adjusted upwards and downwards, but around 8%. It seemed reasonable. I can tell you that I handled probably 20 or 15, and that's correct. That's what they were. They were 11.5 on the larger. Anything over 25,000 was $11.50 a square foot market rent. Anything lower than that was $12.50 a square foot, and economies of scale. That's why we did it. And we also had a 5% vacancy, and we had a 8% cap rate. Well, some of these numbers have changed this year, and the city can't substantiate it. And I brought to one of the assessors' attention, who I think had a lot to do with the development of the city's position on car dealerships. I brought to his attention that that it is tough. They're going along the right direction. They were looking at the building, and it had different qualities of finish and different utility. And as a rule of thumb, 60% of a car dealership is the sales office, the business office, and the customer lounges, and then there's 40% left over. Usually it's parts and service, and, excuse me, the auto body. So there's a formula for how a car dealership is comprised. And so what the city did, is it looked at that and it tried to come up with this using big box and adjusting it. And it was the wrong approach in my opinion, because you could very easily have done a better job by using flex warehouses. But flex warehouses have a rate of $9 to $10 a square foot. I happen to handle 1301 Kenaston. Kenaston is a whole street of beautiful, across from Mercedes and across from some of the new dealerships, beautiful flex warehouses. And we just did the hearing this year and the rates were $10 on flex warehouses. You could sell cars out of a flex warehouse. You could open, it wouldn't be the same complete auto dealership, but you could. But you would never sell them out of a big box. Well, why is it called a big box? Well, because it's all about volume. So they build a square. The best thing you can build is a square, and they build it high. And they just drive volume out of there. Well, that's not what car dealership Mr. Smith was bang on. It's a different kind of traffic. Everything is different. So how do we come up if you look at a dealership and you take a percentage of it, and you'll see some pictures of this one in a moment, where they have customer lounging areas, some of the new Mercedes, they give you beautiful cappuccinos and whatnot. They're high quality, high finish. There was a question earlier about why is it on the cost basis. Well, in Calgary, it's on the cost basis. And in Calgary, under Marshall Swift, you go 1 to 5. And the top finish in a Mercedes deal, the same Mercedes dealership in Calgary as we have in Winnipeg, except in Calgary it's slightly bigger, but it's the same configuration. And on Marshall Swift, it's a category 5 is for the interior finishes, where you sit, the showroom, business office. But the back end of the house, which is parts and service and whatnot, is at 2 in the range of 5. So there's different values to, and they should attract different rents. And if you are going to look at that, treat them as flex warehouses, not as big box, because big box, you can't sell cars out of a big box. So, where's the 8% come from? That's where it comes from. We're using the cap rate for this year. The 7.5 comes from the 8% that I would consider standard for this type of business, and a reduction because of the location. This is the highest visibility location on the site, I would think, or as high as any of the others. But it's a prime site on that particular situation. You have to recognize in cap rate the amount that the city took away 2 cycles ago when they said we're not recognizing the capital replacement reserve anymore. And there is a reason, or pardon me, there is a legitimate concern when you're in an auto mall. Number one is you can only be auto related. You can only sell things in an auto mall. So that speaks to cap rate about the property. Number 2 speaks to cap rate is the fact that these owners, if somebody were to buy into the condo, they will have to be prepared to replace some infrastructure in due course. And I can tell you right now that the last report I had, which was less than a year ago, the Waverly Auto Mall on the east side of Waverly had a funded capital replacement reserve. They had taken those monies that were allowed and they had funded it. So they had something. Maybe not enough to handle everything, but they had at least some funds in the capital replacement reserve. On the other side of the street, they don't. And that's on the west side of the street. So that also speaks to risk. It's like living in a condominium where you don't have a capital replacement reserve and there may be identifiable problems. But when you build an auto mall, you know that you're gonna have to probably in 30 years, you're gonna have to replace some of the roadways and infrastructure. So there has to be some provision for that. And the Laurie's found out in one of the properties we're going to be doing today, Used to be Sunrise Toyota, very successful dealership, very small, very successful. Toyota told him, the question the chair had earlier, do they participate? No, the manufacturer tells you what to do, and you don't have a choice. And what's very important, Mr. Smith alluded to it, but the land is very, very tied up to the dealership. They won't give you a dealership if you don't have the appropriate land that meets their needs, that's in the market they want to be, that's not competing with somebody else they have. So, just to go back to let's go to my page 3 for a minute again, and the 7.5, I believe that the assessed value for this property should be $4,715,150, and that's accepting the 1106, which is the city's number. And also, with respect to cap rate, there is somewhat less risk in vacancy because they're so reasonable with that. That 1105 seems to me to be a fairly reasonable market rent, but the model developed it purportedly. So, the main issue I have here is 2% increase if it is in fact, if it's following the model of retail, and a slight increase in the cap rate. I believe the cap rate for auto dealers in this cycle should be 8%. Now, there hasn't been that much movement. It was the cap rates in, I've got it here, it was actually part of my presentation, but I don't think we're gonna look at stuff from before. But in 212, which I believe the reference date then was 208.
Sorry, Mr. Story, are you talking, what do you?
Oh, I was gonna tell you that, okay, where cap rates were in 208, but I
okay.
don't have.
Rates.
Okay, so we'll get back to this. So I respectfully submit that the board consider the 2% for the argument you've heard earlier today with respect to realty taxes, or vacancy, I'm sorry. And we'd like the 5% reinstated, and we think 7.5 is a reasonable cap rate for this dealership. And that's 8% if you're using a benchmark, 8% would be the cap rate with an adjustment, favorable adjustment because of extraordinary visibility. But not losing sight of the fact that down the road somebody's gonna have to pay some money out if they buy into this. And most importantly, when you have a condominium, and this is in a condominium, an automobile condominium, you can only sell that, so you're limited to who you can rent your property to, sell your property to. So we'll go on from there, if you go to the next page, and what happened is we filed in, I just found out a moment ago, she filed this as 2 pieces, so these are just the photographs that are in your second piece. And I won't show them, I'll just tell you. Good. And there it is, it's Waverly.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
You see all this? Sorry about that. Yeah.
Talk about
that's
this.
it. Yeah. And that's, if you go pages 4 and 5, the right exterior, then you go inside the shop, that's the main floor. You'll see this curved portion above the gold desk. That's a big thing, that came about in, oh, you got the page?
What am I looking for?
Oh, there's another package fair.
At the back,
It's
it's
at,
the border of evidence.
sort of up in the corner under the
Oh, there.
altars.
Okay.
And this was something that came about from the construction of the Boardroom McNaughts, Automotive in 2003. Oh, is that your paper? Your paper?
Just need to
And what, if you know Mr. McNaugh's building across the street from this, it was the first one where the manager actually sat in a window looking down on the business and kind of monitoring it. And this was done by Chrysler, they introduced it here, that's the area above the gold desk, that's where the general manager, his offices. So they got small mezzanines with offices, but they're high quality finish. This is the one that the floors have all different treatments depending on the type of car you're marketing. There's business offices just behind the showroom, that's on page 7. On page 8 is a customer lounge, and when they opened, they actually had a small restaurant in there, it was almost like a full-service restaurant called Jaguars, I believe. And that didn't last too long, but it's still there, the space is still there as a lounge for the customers. And so that's the history of why it is what it is. So I respectfully submit, and it's abbreviated, of course, and I apologize. I do have, if you'd like to, I do have comps. I did the same exercise that we've done before Christmas for car dealerships, where we did exactly, we took the auto related comps and came up to a meeting of $9, and then took the assessor's brief and knocked out the first 4 comps, or 217 leases, and it didn't make any sense at all. It was much lower than what we're using. So we looked at the assessor's 4 properties on the bottom, and that would be the claim center, which we're suggesting should be thrown out, because the claim center is not 40 and not 13, but 44,000 square feet. 9,000 of which is at $9 a square foot, so that's just this information, and that came up last year. So when we merge the two together, we come to an $11.30 market rate, under the even the amount that the assessor had suggested. And so I would ask that the board consider the $4,715,150. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just, my only question is just, for the cap rate evidence, you just verbally spoke to it.
Yes.
There's nothing, okay.
The only thing, well, no, I spoke to them, I referred to the city to the 7.44% that was provided. You've heard the reason that there are no sales of car dealerships as of the property, and so there are no cap rates. So we just have to use what we've got. The municipal board did decide in 2012 that an appropriate cap rate was 8% at that time. Interestingly enough, they had a 10.75 and a market rent at that time and a 5%. This was a municipal board that I did on behalf of McNaught, and it became the formula that was used up until last cycle, which was just looking at the different types of utilities. So the mezzanine space was at a lower rate than the office space, and it was something that's been with the board for some time. But the 8% count goes back as far as 2012 in this case. But the fact is that I've been doing car dealerships for a great number of years, and we had a couple of sales last year, and it will be in your next cycle. But prior to that, I hadn't seen any sales. You just didn't see them. So there's no cap, very little cap rate information.
That's my only question, thank you.
Thank you.
No question.
Nothing?
Just one quick question on your brief, Mr. Stirring. You've got a request of $4,715,150.
Yeah, that's
Are you all right to round that to $4,715,000?
absolutely 4,000,008. No problem.
Just a little housekeeping, thank you.
We have a bunch of information, there's lots of stuff, but we've got, it's all been heard before.
If you're gonna refer to that, we're gonna need that to be.
No, but I'm just saying that we need not, because we talked about the 4 big box stores that was discussed earlier today, or prior here.
Okay,
Okay, so,
we're gonna move on to 1700 Waverly Street, B.
B, okay.
So this is file number 19-4167. roll number 0306504340. So this is Unit B, 1700 Waverly Street. This is a car dealership built in 2000. We have a lease area of 13,955 square feet. So on page 2, you can see the aerial photo. So it's just to the right of the property we just dealt with. It is, I just have the exterior photo at the bottom here, and we have interior photos. These I got from a website, from their website, as of for the reference date. Just the interior, and then on page 4, just some of the service area, car wash. So on page 5, request for information. We do have a received response, I'm not sure where it's blank there. Subject sale history, old sale from 2000, so 18 years ago. And for the subject property leases, I determined there was common ownership. And on page 6, for vehicle dealership income workup, we have applied a rate of $12.03 to this property. 2% vacancy loss, expenses at 2, and a capitalization rate at 7.15. So the rate's a bit higher on this one than the last one, but this is also, it's a smaller square footage, and a newer building. So on page 7 is the rent comparables. I'll cross out page 8, and page 9 is just the income value summary. So we've already gone through the capitalization rates, model drive. Page 12 is the income and expense questionnaire. So this one here, what they pointed us to is there was financial statements submitted, some, I guess, what would they have as rent, and some expenses I had kind of gone through. And on page 19 is the 2020 Board Revision Addenda. So my recommendation today would be to maintain the 2020 assessed value of the $2,232,000. Thank you, that's my presentation.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Stern?
Yes, please, just, I can just have a moment here to get my bearings.
Yep.
I've got a change, but it's just pennies in the workup. And the reason is that the city of Winnipeg, my properties for some reason dropped off B and C this year. So we didn't know exactly, we were estimating what the owner's position would be.
Mr. Story, do you want to make that change when you're presenting your brief?
Yes.
And then you can just ask the
Yeah.
assessor questions now?
Okay, thank you. Have you had an opportunity to look at some?
I haven't been in this property.
And again, your 2% vacancy loss, that's model.
Yes.
And retail possibly would have a higher, if it were strictly a retail operation, could possibly be higher. Okay. And the 5% you've eliminated.
Yes, the 5% management.
And the cap rate, you're 7.15%. Do you have any evidence to support that?
Not specifically to the car dealership sales.
Okay. And it's reflecting cap rate compression from previous cycle. Can you think of any reason for that?
I'm not sure if it has to do with the way our NOIs were modeled, net operating incomes were modeled, but that's pretty much all I can speak to.
Thank you. And then, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this and pick on you, but if we go to page 7 to the bottom under auto. And you have have indicated, so I don't know what the board wants to do, we can pass this out. But you have indicated that this may, that you don't have a lot of confidence in 1284 and in that, in the information that's here?
No, I was potentially just, I had said before, just cross it out until I can find more information from the
Okay.
person I contacted.
Okay, and we had, okay, just so the board is aware, this is a 44,000 single-tenant building for Manitoba Public Insurance Claims Center. It's 44,000 square feet, of which 28,000 is at $16. This is the city's determination, and 9,800 is at $9 a square foot. Those are from the BAs, but clearly it shows that there's a discrepancy here. So I'm now gonna ask that the board ignore that.
And I believe the assessor has said
Yeah.
that she's ignoring it too,
Yes,
so.
yes. And 3570, I have the financial statement. That lease is $13, but it includes utilities. And with utilities, it's $8.12. I have the information on that. That was in the previous year's information. Do you have any comments on that?
I think I had spoke to it with the first one, but yeah, I think the first applicant that went out had kind of, we've discussed that some of the auto ones there
Yes.
had issues, and that we would look more to just the retail pumps at the top.
So it'd be more appropriate just to strike that auto completely.
Yeah, that would be fine. I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you. And then if you were to look at the retail only, and I did this and I said, well, let's look at the current ones, and that's 2017, right? And there just happens to be 4 of them. So I looked at those 4 leases, and I've got the, I'll give you the median on those 4. And the median on the retail is 1345, and that would be the 4. Number 1 is Sears and Staples, right in the corner of Ellis and St. James. And that market rate shows at $18.25, and perhaps it shows it's a demised premises, now 2 large premises. Used to be the Sears furniture. Number 2 is 1250 St. James, that's the brick. And here's an interesting one, this is on the near, it's the thrift store, a large thrift store. And then you have Ashley Furniture right on the corner of, again on the corner of Alice and St. James. So when you put that together, it comes to $13.45 median. Let me pass that out if you want. And if one were to take our auto-related at 916, we average it out at 1130. So basically, it's the same approach that you've heard earlier, and it's the same approach that we presented to the board just before Christmas. And we've got some decisions here, but we're not going to share anything requested. So, and again, the only thing is, this is probably a more logical approach to valuing a dealership than what we've done so far, because nobody has anything so far. The only place it goes awry is instead of being retail combined with retail being big box, it should be flex warehousing. And if that were the case, I think you'd find a better number. It would probably be in that $11 range. Page 8, I understand your.
I just didn't have, the assessor made this, I couldn't contact him in regards to how it was done, so I
Yeah.
just strike it out.
Okay, and the big one, there was a sale, but it was a Patterson, and it was a very convoluted sale. And once again, your page 17, or it's page 22 in this brief, is the city capitalization rate evidence for whatever it is for. And one of the board members asked what type of activity happened in the retail stores. The one that's we would most identify, we believe, is the one with the highest cap rate, which is 7.446. So we then would ask you to go. And I've got an adjustment, if I may.
Are we still doing questions? sir?
Yes.
On the page.
Questions?
Oh, I'm sorry, a question? My apologies. Those will be all my questions.
Is that all your questions? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Mr. Story.
I have
Mr.
no
Riss?
questions.
And I have none.
And I have none. And just before we hear your brief, Mr. Story, we're just gonna take a quick 5-minute break.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Okay. And what we're gonna- So, Mr. Story, I'd like to call this hearing back to order, and you are going to discuss some rebuttal evidence. You
Yeah,
read
this
out.
is a slight change, very small. And it was, there were no my properties on line when these have to be filed. And so we have to estimate what the city's position was. And so here we have it with ours, and ours was none. You know what? Let's just go by our initial brief, I won't give you rebuttal. Okay, if we can just refer to this page, this is our workup. And you'll see that we take, this is a 13,955, it's small for an auto dealership. As a matter of fact, it's not an auto dealership, it's not a complete auto dealership. We need more square footage than that. We're using a $12 market rent because that $12 reflects, we think, the size is $13. It's got uses as vehicle related, it could go into automotive, vehicle related. We think 12 is reasonable. If the city is in fact using retail components of parameters, then we think that they're making an error, not using, as Mr. Smith had indicated, they're using residential multi-tenant vacancy. We requested before, not 2%. We're asking for the 5% to be reinstated, and we're asking for a cap rate of 11.5%. And that's an assessment of $1,952,509. We'll walk through there. I've got pictures. Do you want, maybe it's go to page 2 of the assessor's brief. You can see the pictures. It's a Cura dealership. And
So, excuse me,
Yes.
Mr. Story, so now you're wanting to present your, I think we'll,
no, I'm gonna give you the correct, there's a correction, but I saw it, it went down, I didn't wanna ask you to take it down. So this, no, that, when,
So, but your rebuttal evidence that you handed out, this is your new value.
well, when I handed, let me just have a look, I don't remember exactly.
I think
He said he
corrected-
didn't want to use it.
Yeah. we
You
can-
do not
yeah,
wanna
it's
use the
necessary. Let's
rebuttal.
go, because it's just to show you the comparison with the city.
Okay,
So if you don't.
Strike this.
so we're
apologies,
not
just
using
tear
the
that.
rebuttal.
Yeah, we just
Okay,
use the
so you're
file.
gonna give us your brief right now.
Yes.
Okay.
our young lady. Okay,
B or C?
This is B.
we're on B right now.
We're on B, yeah.
So the assessment of the city's position is $2,232,000. It's on 1.7 acres. You can see land to building is a problem for this particular property for that use. So you've got a relatively small piece of land, which would speak to capital. And then we'll just ask you to, we have a lot of material prepared that we can't use because of, or not using because of the request at the beginning, so I really don't have very much I can provide you in cap rate. The city is suggesting, market rent, we're suggesting $12 a square foot in market rent, 4% again to reflect the retail component of it, 7.5 cap. The city is using 7.15. The neighborhood strip mall, which is retail, is 7.44. So we think 7.5 is reasonable. And that's an assessment of $1,952,519, rounded to $1,950,000. And I've got some pictures and things, but I think you don't have to see them. I think that's,
Okay, thank
if
you.
there's any questions, I can, but it is
No
right now.
questions.
Any
just-
questions, Ms. Teacher? Questions?
No questions.
Mr. Richard?
Just a point of something, I'm not
Yeah.
sure what it is, but is the photo the same on all three of your briefs? On the front page?
On the front page, if possible. That looks like Waverly. Could be, yeah. They're not intended. Yeah, that is Waverly.
Yep.
Yeah.
A, B,
Yes,
C?
yeah.
And is it, it's intended to be the same photo?
I didn't do it, Bruce, but I presume it is, yeah. It's not intended to be site-specific, I guess. It's just the car dealerships, I imagine. Or she uses that for all of the lorry, has a number of dealerships. Sort of like that. You could be right.
Okay, just a little bit
Yeah.
confusing from our end, but
Thank
that's
you.
fine, I think we got it.
Okay. Yeah, this is definitely not a small unit, that's a large unit.
I was confused in changing the order.
Yeah.
I don't need any more confusion. Okay. Fine.
No questions?
No questions.
Okay. Just one question, Mr. Story,
Yes.
on your brief. Do you want to round it up to $1,953,000?
Yes, sure.
Thank you, and I have no questions.
Thank you.
So we will move on to our last property, which is C-1700 Waverly.
Yeah, the same picture.
This is,
Yes, whenever you're ready,
Sorry.
Ms. Teacher.
this is file number 19-4168, roll number 03065043500. So this is unit C, 1700 Waverly Street. Car dealership built in 2000, leasable area 15,743 square feet. So on page 2 just shows the aerial photo of the parcel, just now to the farther right. And the exterior photo that shows the Automax Crown. Page 3 just shows the request for income and expense. Subject sale history, again, old sale about 18 years prior to reference date, and subject property leases, from what I determined, was submitted from the financial statements, common ownership. So for the vehicle dealership income workup, we have rental rate of $13.74 per square foot. And we have 2% vacancy, 2% expenses, and $6 per square foot for shortfall, and a 7.15% capitalization rate again. So we have the estimated market value of $2,879,000. Cap rate, page 5 I went over, we can just cross out the auto ones at the bottom, cross out page 6, and just the income value summary. I've kind of gone over everything in my brief besides, for this one, if we turn to page 10, the income and expense questionnaire from 2017. So I think it says on the front there, just, yeah, the non-arm's length lease, and it just has financial statements I had kind of reviewed. Page 15 is my board of revision 2020 addenda, and gone over that. So my recommendation today would be to maintain the 2020 assessed value of $2,879,000. Thank you, that's my presentation.
Thank you. Do you have any questions, Mr. Story?
No, just clarification. You're aware that this is not a car dealership, it's a parts, just sells parts, it's a performance parts center?
Yeah, from the picture, it looks like it's
called Automatic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, repairs and tires and truck accessories.
Yeah, it's called.
I've actually never been in there, so I'm not sure. of
It was
this.
formerly a car dealership.
Okay,
It's Toyota, Sunrise Toyota, Sunshine Toyota.
okay.
Again, same questions, the 1374 is model
Model driven,
derived,
yes,
as is the cap rate of 7.15,
yes.
as is the 2% vacancy rate.
Mhm.
And we think that they're model derived from a retail-ish component. And then, as you said in your page 5, to strike the bottom.
We'll just strike the bottom one,
Yes.
so yeah, after
Yeah, I
what's been
agree.
discussed.
And that making the board aware that the first 4 of the 217 are in, 2 of them are in Polo Park, or 3 of them are in Polo Park, and 1 is on near. They're a long stretch from, you can't imagine selling a car at Ashley Furniture. However, having said that, you can buy a Ford at Costco, so. All this has been mute. Okay. Those are all my questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, just a question about the use of the building. Those look like display vehicles at the front. It does say risk-free car buying, we
Okay.
guarantee it. So is this also a used car outlet
No,
as
Rick,
well?
Trevor mentioned it in his presentation, a big part of the car business now is financing, and that's people buy or lease cars to reinstate their credit. So I think that's what that's about, but each of the dealerships, each of the Dilawri dealerships have their own used car inventory around their building. So this one, I don't believe there's some used cars out of here, but they're right across, right just outside of the picture. They're right next door to, all these dealerships are fairly close together.
Okay, that's my only question.
Are we questioning
For
Mr.
me, we
Storr,
are
or
questioning,
questioning-
we are, it was
I'm
Ms.
confused
Santucci's
now.
question.
Well, he was answering it.
I,
Yeah.
I
like,
assumed that you
when
probably
I
didn't know.
reviewed it was listed as a VCD, so I couldn't find anything on the website. There was no interior pictures and no one had been there. If he says that there isn't any sold there, I don't have any evidence to disprove
Well,
that.
they may very well, but it's just, it's not,
I'm sure.
it's
so.
not, there's no manufacturer has any design criteria or anything. This one is and what happened is that they were required to move, to expand their facility, put in an indoor oil pit or do oil changes inside, car wash, et cetera, et cetera. So they built across the street. They didn't do it on purpose. They were compelled to in that Toyota store. And that was about 4 years ago. They hadn't been able to find a tenant for this building. So they ended up moving in themselves with their high performance. But then you go in there if you want to.
That was my only question.
Okay,
I have none.
okay.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Santucci, you didn't have a chance to inspect this property?
No, and I don't know much
When it
about
was last-
Automax, unfortunately. There was no notes at a
Okay.
prior inspection.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Story, if you'd like to give us your brief on this?
Okay. Quick review and then- This is C 1700 Wiggly Street. It is called Automax, it's part of the Dilawri Auto Group. It was formerly Sunrise Toyota. It's immediately adjacent, or next door to to the former Acura spot that we just went through. Not former Acura, former File, which is the Acura, it's next door neighbor. It's small for a full, complete dealership. It does have some parking and car storage around the back, as do all these buildings. The assessment right now is $2,879,000. It has always been in the category of the smaller size with a little bit higher market rent. Historically $12 versus 11.5, or $12.50 versus 11.5 for over 25,000 square feet. We've suggested a market rent of $12 a square foot. and that he marked the vacancy of 4% versus 2%. I mean, 2% is not typical of any retail. In fact, Stevenson is interesting. Somebody asked Mr. Smith a moment ago, where did this come from, the Crouch report? It does, but in fact, Stevenson also issued a report of retail vacancy in there, 4 to 6%. I would like a reinstatement of 5% and using an 8% cap rate, which would also capture the fact that this is a condominiumized, uncondominiumized land with a reserve that may or may not be properly funded, but it is an encumbrance on buying property, having that contingency or the unknown. So using the 8% cap rate, I would request assessment of $2 million over 2%, $2,030,000. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Questions, Ms. Santucci? No. Mr. Boraski?
No.
And none.
And I have none. Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize for your patience. I'm not feeling very well today.
Thank you for your time this afternoon, Mr. Stern.
Okay.
And I would like to call this hearing to an end. Thank you.